Then my guys dismounted, and Fokker looked at me and he said, "We're going to attack now. Remember, don't die." I mean, he got out, and they got behind the BTR. It was this little bottleneck of woods to our left, woods to our right, and a bottleneck, and then the road opened up right in the woods. And I'm watching that front BMP dudes, and as it just barely cleared that fucking front opening, it was almost like someone had hit a button, almost like God had hit some type of button, and that to make that thing go boom. Because I guess it might have just been a T-72 somewhere else that hit it. I think it was a Russian T-72 that was hidden in the town and saw the BMP, but it just blew up. It lurched forward. This giant fireball came out the hatch, out the front, and then blew the doors off the back, and it killed everyone behind it, dude. Sweet.
Awesome, man. Well, for those joining me, look, thank you for coming back. And a massive thank you to Justin for coming on and chatting to me today. We got in touch through social media. We're going to go more into your story, Justin, but just quickly, you served in Ukraine with the, I will say, infamous Azov Battalion, famous in some circles and infamous in some other circles. But I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me. So thank you very much.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. It was pretty nerve-wracking, but at the same time, I just feel like there's so many like fucking people out there that want to know what's going on, and they want the actual boots on the ground story. And I'm here today to give that, but I'm not here to kind of floof it up. Ukraine was a reality for me, that of which to this day still feels like a dream coming back here to America. Every day I wake up, I still can't believe that all that happened, and it just happened to begin this year in my life, and I'm only 22.
Fucking Russian, блядь.
Fucking Russian.
Доброго вечора, ми з України.
So it is something of which that I think a lot of people should know, and they should know the true reality of it. It just has to be. People, you look in the news. It was funny. I had taken a trip to the behavioral health hospital when I got back. I was having some real tough times, and the war in Ukraine came on the news, but all they showed was like this random shitty blown out building from a bomb and a couple firemen that were digging through debris, and that was it. I mean, yeah, that's bad, but at the same time, it's like that's not giving the whole story of what's going on. So when I hear about journalists like you that actually are getting the stories, getting the actual out of the norm interviews and stuff, I was like, I got to reach out to this guy. And so I had a couple of my buddies on Instagram let me get a hold of you, and they reached out to you when you texted. I was like, dude, now I'm not so sure. I was like, I'm nervous, but I'm glad to do this.
No, mate, look, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And yeah, you reaching out was epic. Look, on that media front, we've all seen what the media put out, and I know the American media tends to be a bit more extreme, I guess, than the Australian media, as far as you've got Fox and CNN on absolute like polar opposites, and we don't have that to the same degree, I guess, here. But what do you think that is happening that they are not showing?
I would say that they're not showing. I'd say that the American media has really blown Ukraine's capabilities out of proportion. I'm not saying that they can't do well. I fought with some of the best people in the world, of which who couldn't even speak a lick of English to me, and yet their actions spoke volumes. But at the same time, I went through losses and defeats and horrendous days and moments of which I didn't think I'd make it back to my home, of which I'm here in at this moment. And I think the American media really tries to steer away from that. They want to keep people on the loop with Ukraine. They want to make Ukraine look very, I call it family friendly. I think they want to keep it very like even keeled and stuff on the news, so then people aren't freaking out. And then when you get people like me coming back stateside and sitting down with people, they're like, I never knew that. They're like, holy shit, I never saw that in the news. And I'm like, well, no fucking surprise. There's so much stuff that is not being reported, because at the same time there's too much available to report on, but all of it is stuff which doesn't fit the narrative for the American media. And I think the narrative for the American media is we want everyone to think Ukraine's doing fine. We don't want people to see people's homes destroyed. We don't want people to see, little girls losing their arms, little boys that were blown up by artillery shells. We don't want to see, grandmother's corpse hanging from a tree because she was blown out of her apartment by a Russian jet bomb. The shit of which no one wants to hear about. It was funny, when I got back here, my dad looked me in the eyes and he said, I don't want you to talk about the war because no one wants to hear about it. I was like, well, lovely, right? Thanks for that. And it's funny, it's always funny. People are like, I support Ukraine so much and this and that. And I see so many Ukrainian flags hanging out from people's doors, but none of those people, I bet, truly know what's actually going on. And I bet you they probably changed their mind about what is going on if they found out the true story.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of, things you've seen that go against, I guess, that media narrative?
So we could start off with, I'd say there was, when I was taken off the front lines and was going to Bakhmut. So I actually got back here to America on a free plane ticket, thanks to an ABC journalist who took me off the front lines. I gave her like a small snippet of my story, and she was touched enough to where she said, I'll take you home. But she was with a humanitarian group and she wanted to go to Bakhmut with them and report there. Well, when we went to Bakhmut, we showed up at this makeshift hospital where they were yanking Ukrainian soldiers off the front right outside Bakhmut. I think it was not Pisky. No, it was Pisky. Yeah, Pisky. And at this makeshift hospital, we had other reporters there too from America. And it's funny, as soon as the ambulances started rolling up, they were like filming the medical specialists, the doctors, and all that. I kept sitting there watching that. But as soon as there was a BMP that rolled up, and inside that BMP, dude, like blood honestly had just spilled out the back of it because there were so many wounded that they had just tossed in the back of it from the front. And as soon as they were bringing out these guys, and these guys were really fucked up. Guys' limbs just hanging there by sinews. One guy's fucking might as well just put a fucking bullet in his head because his face was just so goddamn mangled. And as soon as they're bringing these wounded by, they turn to cameras. They don't put it on that. They turn to cameras. And there's another kid, I think he was only like 21. He was like an independent journalist or whatever. I ran into a lot of this. I always thought it's kind of funny. I did interview for a few people when I first got to Kyiv in late February. And they're like, I'm an independent journalist. Why are you here? And I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be funny where I see where the hell this snippet ends up. So yeah, there's this independent. It was funny. The end of this kid, 21-year-old kid, he was from California. He looked like a guy. He looked like a stereotypical surfer and everything. The beard. He was the only one that actually kept his camera on those guys, and that kind of made me think about it a couple times. I'm like, and then when I finally got to come back to America to see what they're actually pouring and stuff, they didn't show anything really. Not nothing that would make me support Ukraine, to be honest, if I didn't go and fight. So, but it was because I saw the stuff that I did in the beginning of February and then late March that made me go. And so it was stuff like that. As I said, that's what spurs action, is reality. Reality spurs action, not fantasy. And I think a lot of America is trying to keep a fantasy picture of what the war is like. So
Yeah, you said before that, you see these Ukrainian flags hanging and, stuff like that. But if people knew the reality, they wouldn't support it. What element do you think would turn them off supporting?
I just think I think just what war brings out in people. I think what it brought out in me, what it brought out in others. Because I went there and I feel like I did good things, but at the same time, I know that there were a couple instances where I could have done better, or not so much in my actions, but as well as my behavior. So I would say, yeah, just reality, because a lot of people in my country don't like to address reality,
Yes.
and especially when it comes to war. Like my father doesn't want me to. My father won't speak to me on it. My mother treats me very carefully now, and it's people don't want to know about it, and that's what sucks. That's what really sucks. I remember I think the one latest example of that, I think, of which turned Americans off, that I thought about was Vietnam was the latest, Vietnam, and then there was World War II. And Vietnam, they showed, you had journalists from like ABC or CNN that would tag along with patrols and stuff with like Marines or Army infantrymen. And this happened to my grandfather when he was at Khe Sanh. They had a CNN reporter embedded with his platoon, and it was funny. He had his little microphone and everything, his little like microphone box and everything's holding up to my grandfather. He still has that little film piece. It was very interesting to watch. As my grandfather's talking, they actually came under shelling. They came under artillery fire by the NVA and Viet Cong. And he told the journalist, he's like, "Hang on one fucking second." And the journalist just fucking went silent and just sat there and filmed him the whole time. And it was hilarious. And my grandfather said, he's like, "That's the shit that nobody likes to see." It was funny when he sat me down when I was like 5 or 7. He said, he showed me that. He's like, "That's the shit no one likes to see." He said, "That's why people didn't like supporting the war." And that's still something that I definitely now understand what he meant. People will support anything as long as it makes them feel comfortable. If it makes them feel uncomfortable, then they won't support it.
Yeah. And I really agree. And a lot of people have got stuck into, myself recently, being like, "Oh, you're a Russian shill, blah, blah, blah," because I have this opinion of like, there needs to be actions taken to come out of this war somehow.
Exactly.
And my opinion changed on this war. I think maybe late March it was, when I was in Kharkiv, when some ground had been taken back off the Ukrainians, and the amount of dead bodies there, like Russian dead, was just crazy. And I explained to people, I'm like, it's easy to watch it on TV or Instagram or whatever and have this opinion, but when you're there and there's they're just young men who have been just ripped apart by stuff, you'll have a different opinion. I said those couple of days I was up there, that changed my entire mindset on this. Opening basements full of bodies just dumped in there, and yeah, like it doesn't matter. And to that point, to be honest, it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. These guys are just young dudes.
Yeah.
And I think that changed it. And it's difficult too, because I'm like, I have all that footage, but the thing is too, is the media, mainstream media can show a lot because they come under different laws and regulations and stuff with news. But guys like myself who YouTube, like, I just can't. What can I use that? I can't use it anyway, because they'll just ban me instantly. And it's like,
exactly,
showing the reality of war is very difficult. And when you try and talk about it, people think you're lying, or
people think you're crazy.
You're supporting Russia because of this, or you're supporting, like, I'm just trying to tell you the truth.
It was to tie into that, when it was funny. I got pulled up right now on my laptop screen. The reason why I went to Ukraine, it was a little girl named Sasha Filipchuk, and she was she became news famous. Unfortunately, I wish that no one had really reported on her, but she was the reason why I went to Ukraine. And I always say that because you get a little girl. She lost her arm. She was evacuating Irpin, and the Russians opened fire on her vehicle, and I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. Obviously, I saw her on the news, and I was still in America, and that spurred my action to go. But at that point, though, I felt that a little bit of that propaganda. I felt like, well, fuck these guys. They're targeting a little girl, and I've always had a soft spot for kids. I hope that one day I can be stable enough financially and mentally to have a wife and have a daughter and stuff. I want to have my own family. And when I saw that dude, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, what am I doing here in my comfortable life? And these fucking, you know, monsters are killing kids. So when I arrived there, dude, when I eventually made my way across Ukraine, it was a hilarious story getting there, dude. I made it to the border of Ukraine and crossed the border of Ukraine penniless. I had $3K in my bank, but I ran into some other Americans, was just saying Warsaw, and they need a DD. They want to go drink out, party in club. Well, I went with them, and they left my debit card on an open tab, and they drained all my money. So without letting me know. Yeah, it was crazy, dude. So what I did is I was so pissed off that I made them pay for my bus ticket to the border, but I didn't go with them over. I went on my own. So yeah, when I got there, dude, again, I was now boots on the ground. I was seeing everything for myself, and I ended up in Lviv, and I was and this is how I got to Azov. I was going to join the Georgians. I actually had a whole application filled out. I was going to end up at the Georgian National Legion's barracks in Lviv, and I had a contact I was going to meet. But when I got there, he instead called me and said, "Hey, look, we can't take you. Our unit is full." I still think it's bullshit to this day, but whatever. I got with the unit, didn't matter to me now. But well, I was sitting there in my uniform, really, really confused on what I was going to do. Had no money, no way to get back home. I was in a war zone, and this random Ukrainian came up to me, and his name, I still talk to him this day. His name's Mishna, and Mishna came up to me and said, "You're American." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Are you here to fight?" "Yeah." And then he started showing me these pictures of all the Russians that they've been fighting and killing outside of Kyiv. And he said this, and to this day, he's still the only, really the second Ukrainian I ever met who had a really realistic grasp of war. He said, this is what you came here to join to do. Do you want to do this? And I was looking at, you know, like you said, it's easy on the media. I was looking on his phone. It's easy to look on a cell phone when you see dead bodies, these bodies of young men. And I was like, I had a lump in my throat, but I was like, yeah, I'm here to do this. I'm here to do this. And he's like, okay, follow me. I'll take you to Kyiv and you'll fight. And I was like, oh shit. So the next day I began my 9-hour drive to Kyiv with all my stuff, with Mishna. And the first body I ever saw in that war, dude, was when our bus had pulled aside into one of the in-between towns between Kyiv and Lviv. I needed to take a piss, so I ran into the bushes real quick and zipped down my pants as I'm peeing, dude. I'm sitting there, you know, and I looked over to my side and I see right there, dude, there's this corpse, this like Russian corpse that was being eaten by dogs, these puppies. And dude, I just fucking booked it back to bed. I just couldn't. I was like, I didn't think I saw what was real, but then Mishna came over and he goes, "You know, you okay?" And I was like, yeah, like I just kind of did a whole, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, let's keep going. So, but that was the first reality check. And honestly, I probably should have taken that reality check and tried to get home. But there's no way, dude. I mean, there's no way. I was fully there. No way to get back. And I think that's what spurred me forward, was just, I'm here, I can't go back, so I might as well stay and fight. So, and I tried to keep Sasha in my head the whole time. But you know, at some points you kind of lose kind of like your main focus with what you're doing and why you're doing it. So, but yeah, that was the first time I ever saw a body there, and I was But even just to call it a body, dude, it's like you call it a fucking body and you're just kind of demeaning. That was the first time I ever saw like a person that was dead, and it was just like a corpse, a skeleton being eaten by dogs, and it was yeah, it was pretty fucked up. So, and I wish that didn't have to happen. You know, we're in the 21st fucking century, and this shit's happening. I don't think it's right. You know, I mean, it's easy enough when you're surrounded, like I was in Azov Battalion, by these hardcore nationalists and stuff, and they're calling these guys kasaps and, you know, PWs and all this other bullshit, and, you know, vatniks, and it's easy to say that until those guys are killing you, and you're trying to kill them, and you take them prisoner, you see them up front face, you know, that's easy to do until you see them, you know. And so I don't think anyone here stateside who hasn't been over there. And I've had other younger guys reach out to me on social media, they're different platforms, and ask me, hey, how do I get over there? Hey, I want to go. Hey, can you help me? I just tell them, fuck off, dude. You don't want that in your life. Stay here. You know, you don't know what you're trying to go walk into. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely sympathize with that reality. Because you know, it was a few weeks before I started seeing the bodies coming through, and it was, you're like, holy shit, that could be me. I was just born in a different country.
Yeah.
As well as people reaching out to go and fight, and coming from a military background myself, plenty of guys reaching out to me. And even in the beginning, man, I considered, I was like, am I here doing the right job? Am I here on the camera? Could I be on the tools? And very quickly I was like, no, I am in the right position, because this isn't as clear cut as people might think. And I'm definitely not up to scratch of fighting at the moment. But people reaching out to me, and I'm like, this isn't what you think it is. This isn't, you know, all my friends all fought in Afghanistan or Iraq. And I'm like, this isn't that. This isn't a skirmish with some guys in sandals in the sand dunes where you are going to win. Like, you are like, yeah, I'm not saying there wasn't some massive battles in Afghanistan and people got killed, of course, but you are always going to win. They will just send Apaches and F-16s and men until, you know, that you are so, yeah, I was like, this war, if you go and you fight for the Legion, you are now the man. And you may disagree with this. I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but I was like, that fight in Afghanistan where, you know, the boys have all the tools, all the gear going in to fight the guys in the sandals. You are now the guys in the sandals.
Yep. No, I had so many instances like that, dude. I mean, honestly, if I was gonna be here and try to lay out and just have me talk, we'd be here for fucking hours on my entire experience there. But my first battle there was I was on the reserve component. So I'll backtrack a little bit. I get to Kyiv, and I still didn't know I was joining up with Azov Battalion. I had no idea. I just knew I was going to fight. I had an idea like, oh, I'm just going to join a random territorial defense unit. I'm going to see some fucking crazy shit, and then we'll go from there. You know, I didn't know what was going to really happen next, and I ended up at a medical unit that was to this day, I still know where they are. I still knew where they were, but I don't want to disclose it because the war's still going on. But they were, I got dropped off at this medical unit. It was composed of all civilian volunteers and former doctors that have been studying at the colleges in Kyiv. And Missioner said, I'm going to go to my units. I'm going to ask them to, you know, take you on, and then I'll be back. So he said, relax, have tea, help them out. You know, maybe you'll want to stay here. And I was still thinking about that body, that corpse that I saw getting eaten by the dogs when I was there. But I pushed it out of my mind really because I didn't want it to really affect me. And so I decided to really make myself useful. And I was like being an example dummy when they need to like teach Ukrainians how to apply tourniquets. And I was helping make camo nettings and stuff with these older ladies and stuff who spoke English. And it's funny enough, there was a Polish woman there. She came from Krakow. She had been there. It was just funny where you'll meet people from, like you said, you got people from everywhere. But he got back. He said, "You've been accepted. I want you to come with me." And when I shook his hand, he shook my hand in the way that Azov does it. He did that. And when he did that, I was like, okay, that's a little weird. But then I saw on his arm the same patch that I still have to this day. Azov Battalion. And I was like, oh boy. I was like, what's that? And he's like, that's my unit. I said, Azov? And I was like, he's like, yeah, you're coming to fight for Azov. And I was like, okay. And so I ended up at his barracks, and I spent 2 days there before I was given my weapon and ammunition. And it was fun out. There was this meme, there was this kind of joke and meme that came out from the war in the beginning that foreign volunteers wanted getting like 1 mag and 10 rounds. That actually was true. That was actually with the Georgian National Legion. Thank God I didn't join them, because I only found that out because I met a guy from California who had fought with them, had been at Hostomel and everything, where I first experienced combat. And he said, yeah, man, they wanted to get to the fight so bad. They had all the weapons, but they only took a little bit because they wanted to get there as fast as fuck.
Fucking Jesus.
And I know, right? But he said that he was just as shook up as me, dude. When I met him, he'd already been off the front for like only a couple of months, dude. It looked like he was still fresh off from one day, you know. And so after I got my weapons, I was in this random room with these other guys who barely spoke English. And like I said, it's always funny when you meet guys from wherever, man. Like when I got to my room, there was this other guy that walked in, and his name is Bailey. We'll call him Bailey. And Bailey saw me, dude, and he's like, it's like he said, Slava Ukraini to me, and I said, Heron Slava, and he's like, great, another Ukrainian. I said, actually, I'm American. He's like, what the fuck? And so I shook his hand, and I was talking with him, and he was from the same state that I had really called home. He's from Colorado, and I said I grew up in Colorado too, quite a bit, and I called it my home, still do. And he's like, well, did you know we're going to the front soon? I said, how soon? And it was funny enough, at the same time, my squad leader walked in. His name's Shapa, or was Shapa, but he walked in and said, he said, we're going, hey, get your equipment, we're going to the front now. And I said, I guess that's now. So yeah, dude, I was just crazy. I was so fucking wow. So my first battle was as a standby reserves for Hostomel Airport. By the time that my company was given orders to go support there, because my company had already been doing enough fighting in the suburbs around Kyiv, both south and east. They then were given orders to help with the efforts to take back Hostomel. And so again, man, like I said, yeah, there's a lot of pictures out there of these neighborhoods destroyed, but it doesn't send home the message quite like you said bodies do, man. Like as my convoy's going by, we're making our way towards Hostomel, you see the remnants of all of the fighting that had been going on when it all started, dude. And I mean, as we got closer to Hostomel, like you'd see, like at first I saw those like rusted out, orange colored, burnt out BMPs and BTRs and P-72s, and destroyed homes and stuff. Like everything smoldered black, no big deal. But as we're getting closer and closer and closer, and I'm right on the top of this random BMP, dude. I've never used Soviet, Eastern European equipment. Like I was former military, but I didn't go to Ukraine because of my military background. I went because of a little girl. And like, yeah, the only time I ever handled an AK was when I was picking it up off a dead guy in sandals. And now I didn't realize at the time, like I said, I'm the guy in sandals. And as we're getting closer and closer, dude, now things are more fresh. I started seeing those bodies. I started seeing those BMPs that were still on fire. I started seeing the houses that were still smoking and with flames and stuff. And it was like, it starts feeling like a lucid dream, like you don't think this is happening. Like I know this is happening, but it doesn't feel like it's happening. And people usually, I guess it's funny, like people want to know, like, what does a soldier think about in moments like that? What does a soldier think about before battle? I always kind of laugh at it now. Like, when you watch those movies, like Saving Private Ryan, you see soldiers praying, or you see soldiers like looking at pictures of their wife, whatever. Honestly, dude, I was just my mind was blank. I just was kind of with everything at that moment. And I just was kind of I was just kind of taking everything in. I was trying to make out the beauty, I guess, of everything that was already destroyed. I was trying to look at a tree that was still intact, or a cute little babushka's brick house that was still not blown to smithereens. I was trying to keep things positive in my head. But yeah, the first time I heard artillery, dude, was right when we got right on the outskirts of Hostel Airport, and that's when you hear that, the and it was like, oh shit. I kind of didn't know what it was at first, and then I kind of did. And then yeah, we just stood by there the whole time, dude. And the first time I really had experience with war was when we were told to dismount, just out of the blue all of a sudden, and someone had just yelled "machina," and "machina" usually means machine, and I guess it was a helicopter, a K-52 had come into the area, and everyone had just dismounted. I didn't know what to do at first. I was just kind of looking at what the fuck, and then one of my guys pulled me off the BMP, and we ran into the fucking woods, and oh my god, dude, it was crazy. It was funny. We were all focused looking up at the sky, looking for the helicopter, and then all of a sudden I heard that, it was fun with artillery, dude. It's like you could tell the difference between old artillery and new artillery, honestly. The new shells that the Russians would throw at us, they first kind of zoom in at the last second, and then they explode. But the old shells, they sort of scream. But so yeah, shell fell right in our area, dude. And there's just one shell. Just one shell. It fell right into our area. And I remember splinters just fucking hitting me and stuff. I remember I threw myself to the ground, and when I looked up, dude, like there was a giant hole, it's giant fucking crater hole, and these guys, I guess, that I had just taken a quick glance at, were now gone, and that was my first scrape with war. And I heard, you hear that screaming and stuff, and guys are panicking, and you see everyone kind of gathering around that one little spot. And I didn't want to go over and see what the fuck was there, dude. I was like, what the fuck, just what the absolute fuck. So that was really the only first scrape I had with war, that up close. Because then as we were then still waiting as the reserves for the battle, we then got our orders to go in. But I never recounted Hostel as my first battle, because we got there at the very last second when the Russians then fled into the forest around Bucha and Irpin and tried to make their way back towards Belarus. And my company got told to stand down and secure the airfield. So when we got there, everything was still on fire. Everything was still on fire, and it was just destroyed and everything. Like I said, it was just a dream. It was lucid. It's almost like, I felt like I was almost like taking a calm fucking acid trip. Like I didn't know what it was. You can't just look at it and give a clear-cut answer as to what you're looking at. But then I could, because as I'm walking around, I had made my way towards the what was the name of that huge airplane? I did see that airplane.
Yeah,
the Mura.
Yeah.
I was making my way towards that. I didn't know it was the world's largest fucking airplane was out of Ukraine. I just saw this huge fucking, airplane. But there's this there's this one body that kind of stood out to me. It was facing upright, and I walked over, and it was just a young boy. He had his equipment still on him. He had his Z, his armband and everything. It was that like silver sort of duct tape stuff at the time before they switched over to use white armbands, and he honestly, at that day, dude, he looked like he was still almost alive, and I wouldn't pin him, probably older than maybe 17. I don't know, dude. And I at that moment I kind of felt what was going on. This is real. I think that's what made me realize this is really real. I mean, you could see, like, remnants of clothes and equipment or destroyed weapons or vehicles, but nothing. Kind of makes you realize what the fuck you're really dealing with until you kind of look at someone's remains, you know, their body that's still pretty much intact. And yeah, I just kind of realized, I was telling him about that day I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave that day. You know, everyone was kind of, I was kind of sickened because, you know, like I said, rightfully the Ukrainians were pissed off that this had happened to their country, but there's two sides to the war. And these guys were starting to go around and they were taking patches off, they were taking weapons and stuff, they were looting, you know, they were taking these guys' shit right off of them. And there was this group of Ukrainians that were kind of kicking this one corpse, and it was kind of just, you know, charred up whatever remained. But you know, you look at that, you see that one little kid who's still pretty much there. I mean, you see, like, you know, this charred up clump of whatever. And yeah, I just kind of felt sick, you know. I just kind of walked away from it, you know. I just kind of walked away from that hangar where that huge fucking plane was. I just kind of fucking went over to one of the BMPs and just kind of sat there against the tracks, and just kind of fucking went, you know, looking up. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know. I said, this isn't what I came here for. And I guess that's, like I said, no one likes realities. Everyone kind of likes to have a fantasy of things. And that's the, you know, because people want things to be easier, and that wasn't easy. That wasn't easy to handle. So yeah, boy, it sucked over there, to be honest. And that was the first day. Was that one day that I spent in hospital. That really made me realize what was going on. So.
And what was next for you from there?
Next for me was so that's where I had to figure out what I was actually going to do there. You know, instead of just being a regular infantryman in the ranks. You know, I guess it was still funny, as much as America spent trillions of dollars on the taxpayers' dollar. Being an American with your feet on the ground there was still made you kind of exotic. And I became a bit of the talk of the company, and then I then found other Americans that were there, and we had a reconnaissance team that was made up of Americans. And that was where I realized kind of where I was, you know. That's where I realized where I had to go next. And that's where I kind of had to decide if I was going to stay here or not. You know, Azov Battalion still has a lot of it's neo-Nazi presence. It still has a lot of its Nazi presence. I will say that, because when I met these Americans, it was funny. It was I met these other Americans, and like I said, they're the recon team. They're the guys that have been doing the artillery spotting and the fucking intel gathering and all this. And so when I was told this by one of my Ukrainians, I was like, oh, these guys are gonna be kind of like maybe former Dev Guru or SEALs or Rangers, you know, it's gonna be kind of neat. You know, I felt a little better. And well, I walked in, and it was just a bunch of fucking cowboys, dude. A bunch of fucking cowboys that had no filter on their fucking mouth. It was hilarious. When I walked up to them, they're like, they saw me. It was funny. I'll call him Tex. This guy was from Texas. I'll call him Tex. Tex looked at me, and he's this dude with a fucking, just about a fucking mohawk on his fucking head. He's got this big bushy Doc Holliday mustache and these googly eye trailer park glasses. It was hilarious, you know. He looked like a caricature, dude.
Yeah.
And he looked up at me and he said, oh man, I don't want to say this word on this fucking show, dude. But he looked at me and he said that N-word. He's like, oh man, I thought we were could be given an N-word here for a second.
Shit.
Yeah. And I was like, I just kind of looked at him. I was like, okay. In my head, I was like, what the fuck? But I guess it kind of made sense to me more and more, because it's war. No one gives a fuck what they say or do. And that's what's dangerous. I can attest to that. Well, I looked at him and I just kind of said, I'm like, oh, well, you got me instead. I said, my name's Justin. And I shook his head, and he said, you know, he called himself Tex, and then he introduced me to your guys. And there was one guy who stood out to me. He was their team medic. His name was Gustavo, not his real name, but I called him Doc. He was the team medic, Gustavo, and Gustavo, I warmed up to very well. You know, you have to find yourself a friend or a partner in war. You know, you have to really actually. It's a double-edged blade. Like you have to attach yourself to somebody or other people, but you have to be ready to lose them. And so I attached myself to Gustavo, and he was funny. He said, "Ignore." He said, "Ignore these fucking trailer trash, hick, fucking racists. We're just here to do a job." He said. He looked at his text and he said, "If you keep fucking spewing your mouth like that, I'm not gonna patch you up."
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm gonna like squirt out and die." And he's like, it was funny. Text is like, "You're the only one that can make me squirt." I mean, these guys just had, you know, the dirtiest sense of humor, and I sort of began to have that too. And so that's where I found my first fit, where I thought was my fit, was because they were the reconnaissance team and they were all Americans. So my company had it in their head that if they keep all the Americans, regardless of their experience level or what they can fucking do, if they keep all the Americans in one spot, they don't have to worry about them. So I joined their reconnaissance team, and my first true mission, besides just being told, "Hey, hop on this BMP and go to fucking war," was we were assigned to go do reconnaissance at Bucha. And at that point, this was at our late February had already passed. It was early March, and Bucha was still going on. And at that time, no one had an idea, because Bucha was still being occupied by the Russians. We had no idea these guys were killing civilians. You know, we had no idea. Our job was not to worry about that. Our job was to spot Russian targets in the Russian positions, you know, in the areas of Bucha, around the woods. So we left Kyiv, headed for Irpin, got dropped off at an area right outside on the border of Irpin, and then we had to go on foot. So we set up in the woods and just kind of chilled out for a bit. And the next morning we moved up further and positioned ourselves to where we could actually observe the Russians within the city of Bucha. So, and all we did was just we watched, we collected information. We didn't have our radios turned on. We just kind of kept notes to ourselves, and we are going to be out there for a couple days. So the first day, nothing really happened, and the second night was coming, and that's when we didn't know that that's when the Ukrainians started to try to take back Bucha, you know, and that's when I got to observe war still in, you know, with myself there, my own boots on the ground, but from a distance. And you know, it's easier, I guess. Even it was funny, even when you're there and you're observing it from a distance, when you're still sort of safe, even though you're not, it still isn't, you still don't get the full picture, you know, you still don't get the full picture. But to hear the fucking ferocity of it, dude, the fucking intensity of all that was it still had my hairs on it, you know, it still had me on edge. You know, you're hearing all this, and it's only like maybe a 30-minute walk, and when you're right there, it's crazy, dude. Like, war's its own world. Like, war's its own world, subdivided into many tiny different worlds. And because all across Ukraine, you got one place where nothing's happening, and then all hell's just breaking loose, you know, in another place. And so, yeah, after a couple of days of reconnaissance, the next morning came on the second day, and we're sitting there, we're trying to eat our MREs, and we didn't know that we had been spotted. And so it was funny as we were sitting there eating our MREs, we're just kind of fucking chilling out, joking around. I heard this fucking hiss, like this like loud pop, and then this, and I was like, what the fuck is that? And I think it was only like 5 a.m. around this time. It was not late in the morning. I looked up, dude, and like it was something like I just turned on the lights. You know, like when you're in a hospital and you look up and you got those bright lights, it was like that. And I look up, and at first I thought it was like fucking flares, you know, like I thought it was like fucking flares that had been coming down. And then it got really hot, you know, it got really, really hot around me. And then text screamed out, like he screamed out, it's fucking, he's like, oh shit, that's fucking Willie Pete. He said that's WP. And then we all just fucking, I just got up and ran, dude. Like we fucking just started running and running and running.
Can you explain to the listeners what Willie Pete or White Foss is?
White phosphorus is it's a type of weapon that's banned in the Geneva Convention. It's a type of device that, when released from whatever type of canister or shell, whatever fucking it's released from, it's supposed to be used as a quote unquote marking tool, but it emits a very intense heat, and it will burn anything on contact. And so what's difficult about white phosphorus is that it covers a huge swath of area. And when that one round fell on us, and you could feel that heat coming in, dude, I mean, it's fight or flight, you know. I felt like a little fucking bird, you know. I felt like a little clipped wing bird that had to like hop along when it gets hurt. You know, when you watch a little bird hop along when it's hurt, you know, he's got a clipped wing, he can't fly, he can't get away, and that's how I felt. I just was so fucking scared, dude. And at that point, I'd only seen dead Russians. I had not seen a lot. I hadn't seen a lot of Russian, and I still hadn't even seen them enough to even fight them at close distance. So it almost felt, I had this creeping feeling that no matter where I was, that I was going to be, you know, you get this creeping feeling, no matter where you are, you're going to get targeted. You know, you're going to, you can be reached out and touched, and it's true. So as that white phosphorus is falling, and there had already been fighting around Bucha at that time anyways, though, too. I really felt like I was kind of walking through a nightmare instead of like a dream. It was more of a nightmare now, because as we were running away and away and away and away, we didn't know that we started running through old Ukrainian positions in these woods. And so with that intense light that was shining down in those woods, with in between the shadows, dude, you're now seeing dead Ukrainians. You're seeing these, like a random helmet there, a fucking body here, a fucking rifle that you almost just tripped over. And these are all old positions, but I mean, it felt like a nightmare, you know. And it's almost yeah. And it's almost like I felt kind of like as if, as I was running through all this, you know, when we eventually escaped, I felt like in that moment that all those fucking dead things around me are gonna envelop me, you know. You feel like you're untouchable until you're surrounded by all that. And when you're surrounded by all that, you feel that that's going to become you. As you said, you know, when you see all those bodies, you know, that can be you. And so when we finally ran out of there, dude, we'd reached this little like creek thing or whatever. I just threw myself in there and collapsed. I was so fucking tired. We must have been running for like maybe 5-10 fucking minutes. We just gave up. And after that, I think that was my second reality check, where if I had the money, I probably would have gone home, but I didn't. And so we were all checking each other, make sure none of us got burnt and stuff. And then we're like, I realized probably how vulnerable we can be as a human being. As I said, it was we all looked at each other and said, we're never doing that again. We're never going on another reconnaissance mission for a while. So then it was after that then I had still no idea what I was going to do, like what my role in the unit was going to be. And so I had to figure that out next.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I'm captivated. Just, yeah, like, even if you just want to run through what's happened, like there's no time limit, mate. We can do anything of it. That's an incredible story, running back through those positions.
Yeah, man, it was like I said, it was you felt as if like every time especially at night, fighting at night, felt like it was you were surrounded by ghosts. Not like in a paranormal sense, but like running through those little positions was like I said, it's a whole different world. You don't go from, like in my house right now, I have a TV, I have a fucking fridge, I have coffee, I have Red Bull, I have vodka, I have everything I fucking want. Life's good, life's comfortable. I just have to get up, work 8 hours out of my day, as much as I fucking hate it, and then just go home and I get all these luxuries. There, even if you fucking find a candy bar, you know, you feel like your life has just been improved by 1,000,000%, because there's no comforts there. There's no fucking comforts there. And I will give the Ukrainians credit for this, that which they did anything right was comfort. They never liked to be uncomfortable. You know, there are days they couldn't fight so well. There are days they lost. There are days they won, but nothing came in comparison to them wanting to actually keep up their attitude and be comfortable. You know, hospitality was a big thing for them. Hospitality was a very big thing for them. And so, but yeah, when running through those old positions, I felt very uncomfortable. No, nothing felt comfortable to me, dude. I was still pretty shocked. Your brain doesn't process it all at once. Your brain processes it after, and that's what we PTSD. Because in that moment, you don't process it. People are like, well, why would you stay after seeing all that? Why would you fucking keep going? Wouldn't you be too scared? Well, no, that's your whole world. Your whole world now is fighting and killing and being in a hole, sweeping in a fucking hole in the dirt. You know, you're cleaning a weapon. Like, if you talk about 9 to 5 in a situation like that, everyone's gonna think you're fucking weird. You know, you think that talk about normal things would make you normal, or everyone would want to talk about, but no, your whole world now is war. And that's what actually my family still doesn't kind of grasp it. I don't blame them. But that whole time, I never actually talked to my parents. When I left, I was so compelled to leave, but I felt like I had to get there so fast because no one knows what was going to happen in that war. It was funny. Everyone thought the war was going to be done within a month just because of how fast the Russians were going. So that's what kind of led me to go there so fast. But it was funny, my last day that I'd really spent a normal day in America that February. I had Sunday dinner with my mom, my father, and I had my sisters over, and we were that's when I met one of my sister's fiance, now my brother-in-law, and we were having dinner and stuff, and it's funny, the war in Ukraine came to the topic from one of my sisters at the dinner table, and she said, you know, I really hate seeing what's going on. It's a terrible thing. I said, yeah, I agree. And my dad chimed in and he said, well, don't feel bad about anything of which you can't control or you're not involved in. And in my head, I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy, Dad, if only you knew. I'm so sorry. And my parents always on Sunday dinners would greet me at the door, and they would give me a hug and they'd say, I love you, and we'll see you next week. And if you have any questions, call. Because when I got out, because I served prior to, I was in the Army, but when I got out of the Army, dude, I was penny. I didn't really have much going for me. I had like maybe 8K, and being the guy I am, I blew it all. So I had to do odds and ends growing up from 19 years of age to 21 years of age. I was kind of in and out of everything. And when I was 21, that's when I hit the hardest, because then at that point I was living in my car, living on the streets sometimes, you know, scraping by. Like I'd switch it up. Like during the spring and summer, I was down in Texas doing ranch work, and then I'd collect cash there and come back up. And I kind of got into a rhythm of that eventually, but it was that fall that, you know, I ran out of money because I owed people money. I had medical bills. I had to do all this shit. So come October of 2021, I woke up on the 13th, and I had no money to my name, and I had no gas in my car, and I was fucked. So my parents took me back in and helped me on my feet. So they got me an apartment, they got me a new job. I was comfortable, I was living pretty decently. And then all that changed, man, when the war started, and I threw it all away. And that's something has still completely damaged my relationship with my family. Not the apartment, not the job, but just because on that night when I told my mom goodbye, it was actually the real final goodbye at that point in time. You know, that was the point in time where it was going to be, you may not see me again.
And did you think you weren't going to come back? Like, was it 50-50 odds, or was it 90-10 odds that you're not going to come back?
You know, honestly, when I crossed in the Poland, dude, I guess I was trying to kind of hype myself up for the war. You know, I listened to my music on the whole point fight there. I was keeping myself kind of calm. You know, I was trying to keep a realistic outlook on it. Because because like I said, I thought about Sasha the whole time. I've never met this girl, by the way, though, too. And I figured out only recently, it was 2 weeks ago, only figured out recently she's in America and she's getting a prosthetic for her arm. And she's in New York now with her mom and sister that survived the incident. And so, yeah, I guess I told myself I'm not going to be a hero, but I'm going to do whatever. I'll find whatever I need to so that no one else like her has to be in that position. I said, I'd rather be in that position. So I'd say after that white phosphorus incident, I think at that point I had like maybe a 50-50 outlook on coming back, but at the same time, you know, because I got to know some of the other Americans on that recon team, and I felt like, oh, maybe if they're going home, they'll sympathize and take me back with them, you know. But after that white phosphorus incident, dude, when we're working at HR, and we were all just shocked, like we were like a bunch of scared, you know, rabbits, dude. As if, you know, when a rabbit gets chased by a wolf, that's how I felt. I felt like the Russians were the wolf and I was the rabbit. And at that point, I felt like I'm not going home. You know, I honestly felt like I was ready to. I was accepted that I'm going to die here, and not because I wanted to die. I just felt like there's no way I'm going to see home again, you know. And so when my parents found out that I'd left, my mom told me that when they put out a missing person report first, and when that turned up nothing, the missing person report went up to the federal level, because then my parents assumed I'd gone to Ukraine. So then it became more serious to try to find me where I was. But when it was like the state troopers and stuff had been keeping an eye out for me and stuff, when they called my parents, it was based off what my mom said, you know, they said, we can't find your son. We're sorry. And so my mom, by herself, went out, and she said when she opened up that door to the apartment, she said she felt like she had been, you know, her son had died. She felt like I had died. And she said that was the hardest thing to do in her life. And, you know, it's one of the things that I still haven't forgiven myself for. So, yeah, it was pretty bad. So when I was there, I definitely felt like I wasn't going to make it back, but I told myself I'll try to do as much as I can while I'm here before it's my time. So that's where I kind of found where my next fit would be, because after Bucha, I didn't enter Bucha after that because I was still pretty shook up. But my company went over there again as a reserve force, and they all came back with those pictures and stories of what happened to those civilians, and that sort of solidified my decision on what I was going to be. And I said, you know, make me the best fucking soldier you can, because we're going to go fucking kill these guys. And I think that's where I kind of started losing myself, because I feel like you go from seeing a body of a young boy at Ostomol who came from God knows where in Russia, and you feel sympathy, to where now you see you feel I felt sort of betrayed. You know how I felt for these Russians, or self-betrayed at that point. And I was like, we're just gonna fucking kill these guys. I don't care what these guys are now doing. Like I said, I sort of fell back into that propaganda moment of, I now hate these guys again. I'm gonna fucking kill them. We're gonna do this. And so that's where the next major part of the story comes in, is because we then got orders. Instead of Azov Battalion, I was in the Azov Battalion, but a lot of the standoff battalions from the original garrison of Mariupol were formed by Azov veterans that came from the Mariupol garrison. But in our units, we always refer to as the real Azov was in Mariupol. The real Azov was dying in Mariupol, and we were going to go help. That's where my unit then stopped being reserve forces and, you know, side help to now they were a main force. We got orders to go help, to go reinforce and help break the encirclement of the Azov garrison of Mariupol. And then to this day, I still feel like Mariupol, and it is Mariupol in the news. I never saw a damn fucking lick of a thing on Mariupol the whole war in the mainstream news. No one was touching it, you know. But that whole time, dude, Mariupol, it's a huge, I mean, as you know, it's a huge coastal city. It's a huge port.
Industrial coastal, yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Oh, Odessa was second runner up. And within 2 months, that whole thing was just destroyed. They had shelled it to, I called Mariupol Ukraine's Stalingrad, but they lost instead of won, like the Russians did at Stalingrad with the German forces at the time, back in World War II. And so our job was, our command was in direct contact with their command. And they were saying, you know, we're out here, we're starving now. There's so many civilians down. We can't save everyone. They're every day they gain an inch and an inch and an inch and an inch, and we need the fucking help. Can you send help? And so our battalion agreed. Our battalion agreed. And so there's a I saw, because when you speak English, you don't speak too much Ukrainian. I only know a little bit now, but when you don't really speak it at the start, you don't really know what the whole picture is, you know, in terms of what you're doing there. And there's a little video that came out that was translated into English subtitles about my unit, and my unit was the 5th Special Purpose Regiment, coined and nicknamed Azov SSO Kyiv. And it's one of the bigger sub-units of Azov, but we were a Special Purpose Regiment. We were quote unquote special operations. And it turned out that around that time, mid-March, that our new job became that we were going to go help our guys at Mariupol. And so these guys, I will say this, regardless of, it was funny, regardless of my battalion commander, my company commander being the Nazis that they were, because it was funny, I still get a kick out of this. I came in one day and we were going to watch they loved Ranger School. They fucking, it was funny, they started watching like Ranger School videos. They loved American Rangers and shit. These guys are, you have to realize, these guys are like hyper fucking masculine. These guys are like fucking almost borderline insane in terms of like what, you know, they're hyped up warriors, you know, like they're these fucking gun-ho guys. And so they kind of idolized the American special operations forces. They wanted to be like them for their countries. So we watched these old like History Channel Ranger School videos and stuff, and when my company commander opened up his laptop on this huge fucking TV screen, he had a fucking desktop photo of fucking Adolf Hitler.
Jesus.
I know, and I was like, I just laughed my fucking ass off. I was like, oh, like, holy shit, dude, this is happening.
And how prevalent is that? Because you hear absolutely, you know, different reports coming down. Like how prevalent is it there, the Nazi nationalist rhetoric?
So it's funny. It's like a double-edged sword. When I got there, it's a double-edged sword with how much prevalence there is. For instance, it was like, at that point in time, Azov did start out as just a more hardcore nationalist group. But nationalism attracts, you know, fascism or national socialism or that sort of imagery. And that's kind of what they used it more so for, was imagery. Of course, they were within our ranks. We had a few street hooligans and a couple skinheads and some former political activists before the war. And I would say that for it, it probably started out pretty huge, and it was still kind of there, but it wasn't as much as it used to be. The guys who more just wanted to defend their country have more outweighed the guys who just want to be Nazis. But of course, people who probably watch this will be like, well, if there's Nazis, everyone's a Nazi. You know, why they're Nazis? And it's like, these guys, the history is so complicated there that as an American, you really just can't fucking almost touch it, you know, like right. Just because of like how much background there is as to why these guys are the way they are. why the country is the way their country is. But I'll give these guys credit that they were. I can respect their hardcore nationalism. Could they use different imagery? Sure. Their usage of runes, no big deal to me, to be honest. Eastern Europe has a heavy Slavic pagan presence and background in legitimate history that's been verified by historians, archaeologists. It's there, So things like the rune, like, sometimes, I look at this and it doesn't really bug me too much, But I don't, it was I'd say they had more of an adaptation than an actual belief of National Socialist ideologies. But I did meet some guys that called themselves National Socialists, or they just called themselves street Nazis or whatever, and they were never these. I just tolerate it. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. As long as you fight well, you fight well. If you fight with me, I'll fight with you. But fight for me, and I'll fight for you. But people can use that. Well, what if he was a pedophile? What if he was this? What if he was that? Let's say that out in an out-of-term hypothetical.
Yeah. But you could also say there was fantastic fighters in the Nazi regiments in the 40s.
That's what I mean. Yeah. I would say that's like, it's almost like the lesser of two evils. Would you rather have just a Nazi that's a normal guy but loves Hitler? Would you rather have this? So I sort of just came to a conclusion that I didn't really care. Sometimes I'd even joke around with these guys and sort of do the Sieg Heil sort of deal. Like, they look at me and they'd be like, Hail Americani. And I'd be like, what's up, motherfucker?
Yeah.
Just to sort of fuck with them. It was fun. We did have this one guy who had actually moved to Israel and came back. It was funny. He had been he wasn't Israeli. He wasn't Israeli by heritage or anything like that. He just gone there, joined their military, whatever, came back. He was a Ukrainian full and crew. But this way, sometimes we fuck around with these guys. We do the little like Roman salute, and then they'd throw us the Roman salute, we'd throw them the Roman salute, and then we'd smack it down, and go 9. You sort of just adapted to it because these are your guys. Like, I guess you could say that I sort of just accepted it because it was like, this is who I got left. I didn't have my family, I didn't have friends, I didn't have nothing. I just accepted this. I sort of embraced these guys. I mean, I'm Norse pagan myself. I got my tattoos of stuff like that. I got Tyr and Fenrir on my arm and stuff. I have those beliefs, but at the end of the day, I just sort of tolerated and accepted it because I'm like, these are the guys I'm fighting with. These guys will fight and die for their country, but it's whatever. As long as they fight. I want to make sure I'm not going to be the only guy running into that shit show, And so that was just sort of my view on it. Is it just didn't bug me,
Yeah.
If anything, when you're in war, you sort of feel like you have a freedom, and that's free. That's a little dangerous, but at the same time, you feel like you had this freedom that you can now do some things that you never could do before. You can joke around and say some shit that everyone sort of thinks and wants to joke about. You can throw a Roman in a joking way. Like, you can do this shit. You can fucking carry a gun around and like fucking high five a kid when you're all decked down in your gear and you got like a fucking pocket RPG. And pocket RPGs are good. It's a RPG round stuck in a fucking metal tube instead of having to carry around the fucking RPG on your full RPG on your back.
Yeah.
And like, it's almost like you got this freedom, And it felt good. It felt good. That was one thing that felt good. It was a camaraderie, And I did at one point feel like a little bit of a hero. When we finally got our orders to support the Mariupol garrison with Azov, we were my squad leader was then promoted to platoon leader after Hostomel and stuff, and he was going around asking within our platoon, we need volunteers. He said to me in broken English, he says, we need guys for Mariupol. Mariupol is shit right now. We need guys to go there. Let's go there to help. Do you want to go? And I was like, well, how? I said, well, yeah. I said, yeah, sure, no problem, cool. Like I still had my phone at that time, but I'd switched to Ukrainian SIM card. But because of how many all the bombing and shelling, your Wi-Fi's in and out. But anytime I actually had a connection, I had on my Telegram app, I'm looking, and you could see, this is almost like a day's drive away from me. You could see like a day's drive away from me. You got guys who are fighting, 50-1 odds at Mariupol, and as much as they're holding out, they're still losing tremendous numbers. And when I saw that, I sort of felt compelled, like I sort of felt like stirred, like, okay, maybe this is how I can help, maybe this is how I can truly fucking do my part. Maybe this is how I can actually do something for Sasha. Like maybe I can save one of her major home country cities, who knows? So I said, yeah, put me on the list. And I was the only American that was put on that list. And then the day did come to where the trucks had showed up to take us away, and they're going to take us to an undisclosed airfield, and the airfield was going to throw us on some helicopters, and we were going to kind of fly around from place to place to place until we got close enough to Mariupol, to where we were going to stage a huge raid on the outskirt towns, to then penetrate and make room for reinforcements to come blitzing through to get to Mariupol. Well, it almost felt like, I say, it was a Stalingrad 2.0. The Wehrmacht eventually got encircled there, and they needed reinforcements to support. No one could get there, but they still tried. So you have the Russians. The Russians were eventually being, they were at some point surrounded in the beginning of Stalingrad. They had no one else to come help them, because the Wehrmacht and the Waffen SS was all around them, and they're like, what the fuck do we do? So that was Ukraine's Stalingrad, and I felt like I was going to be part of something historical. I was going to be part of something big. So on that day when the truck showed up, I was checking my equipment. I still have this picture. It's funny. I still have this picture. It was caught mid-shot. It was hilarious. I was right outside one of those trucks, and I had taken 2 photos. I took like this kind of badass photo to Savagery. I had my AK. I had my rocket launcher on the back. I had all my gear ready, and I had my rucksack, and I felt like it was going to be like my last picture, to be honest. I felt like it was going to be my last picture. I still have that picture. And so I took it, I re-looked in that camera, and I put on like almost like a like a warrior's face, like I was like, if this is going to be who people are going to see me as, I want people to see me like this. Like I wasn't afraid. Yeah. And so I took that picture, and there's another picture that was taken, was one of my guys had been making a joke about Americans. Like, it was funny, as my platoon, he's like, you get to Mariupol, there's going to be no burgers, no McDonald's, no none of that. He says, so you're gonna have to put up with that. And I was like, I just had this sort of like, fuck you, let's have a look. And I had my balaclava on, and I just had my eyes squinted up, and you could tell I just had told a fucking dry humor joke. And so after that, the trucks rolled up, and I was getting myself in the back of one of them, and it's funny, like I closed, you close the back hitch and everything, and the trucks were all lined up, ready to take the guys that had been put on a volunteer. We had a little speech given to us by our battalion commander, Rolo, right before we were sent off, and then the trucks started rolling out, and then suddenly they were stopped, and out came my company commander, and he actually yanked me out of the fucking truck and told me, you're staying, and this guy's going to take your place. And it was funny. I feel like that day, I felt like that was one of the days maybe my life had been saved, because all those guys that had went to Mariupol, that were flown in successfully, didn't actually come back. They actually all died. Not one of them. Not one of them was taken prisoner. Not one of them was, survived the whole thing. And the battle had started. Mariupol started from the beginning of the war, February, all the way into like May. So those guys said, I'd later found out that they'd been shot down over the occupied airspace, or their helicopter had been shot down over the occupied airspace, or they landed successfully and they had either been killed on the way to Azovstal, because at that point it was now Azovstal instead of Mariupol. because after the Mariupol garrison moved into Azovstal, now they already had their backs to the wall, or they were just killed if they made it there. So I feel like my company commander, as much of a stubborn little fucking dwarf he was, he was a bald head guy with a giant ass beard, dude. And I swear that guy was like the most racist dude ever, but he fucking loved me for some reason. I don't know. He was hilarious though. Like he was a cool guy. He was a cool guy. He was just fucking hilarious. And I feel like that day though, my life probably had been saved the first time. I just didn't know it. And like I said, at that point, I was doing anything I could because I already felt like I was gonna die regardless. So I wasn't like I didn't want to die. As I said, I just felt like there was no way back. So I was gonna do whatever I could to before my time came for these people. And so he pulled my ass off there. He put another guy on and said, "You'll see them again soon because we're going there too." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, we're gonna rescue Mariupol." And so that's the next major part of the story was we then our trip south to towards Mariupol.
Sorry, before we get into that, how many guys?
Yeah.
So you said they all perished. They all got killed. How many guys are we talking?
We're talking a company.
And how many is that in Azov?
So it definitely differs from American military. Company usually for American guys is about 200, but for the first time, this was a big event for them because they mustered enough guys. It was just about 200 guys.
So 200 guys died in basically the infill.
Yeah. It was
yeah.
And some of those guys that have been with it hostile, some of those guys that just sort of ran into around the base and maybe shared a cigarette with, who knows, To this day, I still don't know truly who they all were. So yeah, it's bad on both sides. It sucks. It's on both sides. You got some conscripted Russian soldiers who are out there right now in the Donbas who were pulled out of their villages, who had nothing they wanted to do with this fucking war, and they were killed. You got guys from Russia, just as much as I was, that believed the propaganda they were fed, went over on their own agreement, and were killed. Or you got guys who were wounded and came back, and now they're fucked up for the rest of their life. It's bad on both sides. But I said at that point I was still one-sided. Now I was becoming more and more one-sided as time went by. So yeah, it was but yeah, that day was really like, I felt like the last day I was gonna be ever seen by anybody ever again. So I really was in that mode and zone of I'm gonna fucking do it. But I'm glad things kind of took a different turn,
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, so then your unit, your company then went to fill into Mariupol?
So yeah, so we sent one company on that helicopter ride, and then we sent the rest of our battalion down south. So when we woke up the next day, we were packing up everything in these buses and trucks and tanks and all that. I mean, it was huge, dude. Like, we're talking blocks and blocks and blocks of vehicles and troops. And we were leaving our barracks. And it was I kind of almost felt like this could be the last time I saw Kyiv. So I took a couple pictures, tossed my stuff in the bus, and just kind of walked around and had one last little coffee at the little coffee shop that would and it was funny, like, you'd think that in a war effort people would still kind of be doing stuff for you for free that were civilians. What was very cool is that the Ukrainians, we still paid for our coffees, we still paid for our fucking food, we still did everything because we know that after the war people are going to need that fucking money. They're going to need money to rebuild. Everyone's going to need the money to still pay for their job or find a new place to live, So I remember I paid for like one of my last coffees in their currency and stuff. I'm sitting there sipping it and just kind of enjoying them. And we got the orders to mount up and go. And I was told that we were to be going to Zaporizhzhia. And Zaporizhzhia, I had not been that far south in the country. Zaporizhzhia was one of the cities I was expecting to be taken over, but wasn't taken over yet. But they were expecting it. They had that feeling, but they were definitely a city that had come under extreme air raids. So when we got, it was funny. That whole trip there was really, really neat. You know, I was kind of getting into the whole mindset of Azov. I was listening to their pagan music. I was listening to their fucking songs. I was making jokes. We were dancing on the bus. We were fucking around, having a good time. You know, you almost forget that you're in a war. You know, you're not so you're not so like antsed up anymore. You're kind of like, oh, this is pretty chill. You know.
Yeah.
You kind of forget. I kind of started forgetting about everything that happened at Hostomel, everything that kind of happened at Irpin. Not like I didn't forget it fully, just I pushed it away in my head. You know, I'm like, I'm gonna have a fun time here. Like this is something I never will get to do again. You know, and there was a Finn. It's funny. That's why I began to meet the other foreigners that I didn't know existed outside the American team in my battalion. So in my battalion, there was apparently a lot more foreigners. We had guys from Sweden, we had guys from Finland, we had guys from Czechoslovakia, we had guys from Poland, we had guys from fucking Canada, we had guys from fucking everywhere, dude. But it was usually like one or two guys that represented each of their countries that had come over and joined Azov. And it's funny, these guys had joined Azov more so on their own terms rather than me accidentally. So, and I'm getting to know these guys, and there was one Finn that I really liked. His name was Carlo. And Carl, he was like that second guy that I really attached myself to. He was like my cool uncle almost, you know.
Yeah.
He was like a cool dad. And as we're sitting there on the trip, we're getting closer to Zaporizhzhia. I'm sitting there on the bus next to him, and he's like, I want you to know this is like our World War. This is our time. This is our moment. He looked around. He said, we're never going to ever get to do this again. We're never going to ever get to do this again. You know, he said, this is our World War. This is our time to do our part in this world. And he said, this is our moment. He said, this is like the second, you know, World War for Europe. This is special. And he said, don't feel bad. He said, you are a soldier now. He said, you are this warrior. He said, just embrace it. And I said, you know, I think I will, dude. I think I will. I just kind of stopped worrying about home. He said I didn't ever text or call my family while I was there. Nothing, you know. I just was so embraced in the moment, you know. And I slowly started to kind of get warped into who those guys were. And so by the time we get to Zaporizhzhia, we were then assigned our barracks and stuff. So what was interesting though is that with how many people signed up and volunteered for the military and all the standalone militias or volunteer battalions, there weren't enough places to actually house people. So it was funny when people always ask me, did you really stay in schools? I said, yeah. My barracks were usually schools. And they said, well, isn't that like war crime? Isn't that evil? Isn't that like this and that? I'm like, no, there wasn't enough room to put anyone else anywhere. And it's funny enough that we actually couldn't stay in these schools unless those schools gave permission for our men to stay in them. And what was interesting, we still have the old school staff that would make sure we're taking care of the place. They would still clean up and they would still feed us and house us and give us clothing and extra blankets. Like the whole country was helping each other. As much as the Russians were trying to help their soul, you know. But that's the reason why we stayed in schools. Was because there just wasn't anywhere else to put soldiers. So we make little beds out of the little, you know, kids' beds and stuff, and we make beds out of the desks, and we make we put our stuff in their cubbies. But I never watched anyone, even from Azov Battalion, ever like, you know, tear up some kid's little like drawing that was left in his cubby when he ran away and immigrate out of the country as a refugee. I never watched anyone destroy, like, you know, just toss aside some little girl's shoes out of a little corner just to make room for his duffel bag. Everyone, it was funny. Like it was funny. I was about to put my shit in there, kind of move this kid's stuff, and my guys got pissed at me. They're like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Don't touch that stuff. That's not your fucking." They said, "That's not your fucking stuff. These kids are going to come back. They're going to go to fucking school. Put your shit somewhere else." And I was like, okay, cool. All right, no, sorry, man. I was right, because I was ready to do it, man. I was just kind of ready to just kind of move shit out of this little spot. That was this little, like, you know, kindergartners stuff, whatever. And that's why I realized, like I said, it's made me come back to Sasha was I felt kind of bad after. I was like, damn, what if that was soft shit? You know, like, I don't know. So like moments like here and there, I try to, like I said, retain my reasons for being there, but more so as we were waiting for our orders to head to the front line while we were just hanging out in Zaporizhzhia, I sort of lost track of that. You know, I really did lose track of that because I was more like just getting used to being around these guys. I was like really embracing this warrior culture, this fucking hardcore nationalism, whatever. And like I was really like, I ain't killed a single Russian. I'd seen Russians, but dead, but I ain't killed a Russian. So I was like getting hyped up, like every kind of greenhorn in the military does that gets deployed. Like, I mean, it. You get to Afghanistan, you feel pumped up, feel a little nervous, but you're like, we're gonna go fucking kill these guys, we're gonna fucking kill these terrorists, this and that, who are and all that shit. And then that's a different story after your first like engagement, It's that's how it goes. So I'd say we stayed in Zaporizhzhia for like 2-3 weeks. I'd say we stayed in Zaporizhzhia for like, I'd say 2 weeks tops. And we were just kind of doing like training. We were doing like mounting and dismounting practice with the BMPs and tanks. We were practicing with mortars. But the thing though is it was really jerry-rigged with all the training. It was more like these guys had to do trial and error. They learned from these guys were only good at fighting because they learned from their losses, which is very primitive. Like as you and I know in the Australian military, as I'm sure as much in the American military, you train and train and train and train and train and train. Sometimes you'll go your whole career without even deploying.
Yeah.
Here it was different. These guys were just trial and error, and they were okay with that. And that's what sort of pissed me off sometimes, or made me feel uncomfortable. Is it wasn't like they didn't care about guys dying. It was just they were so endowed in their core culture of war. Azov, not all the Ukrainian military, Azov. Azov was so endowed in its culture of war that you're the uniform. You're the uniform. You're not so much the person. You're the uniform. You're the warrior.
Yes.
So when you die, it's not. No one really mourns you. It's more like they like they leave a lot. They put you on this pedestal of like badassery. Like he was a warrior. He was a fighter. He killed a lot of guys. He was this he honored himself and his fellow comrades and this and that very well. And it was left at that. It was more odd to see someone crying for their men, for the loss of their men, than praising the loss of their men. Because I said they learned from trial and error, and they never really had any of that more professional training. These guys knew how to use their weapons, yeah, but it was like they were going to incur losses in order to learn it.
Yeah.
So after 2 weeks, the orders came. The company that we had sent was on standby, ready to rock, and we then moved to Pokrovsk. And Pokrovsk is a little like riverside town.
Yes.
It's right on the out. It kind of borders between east at the beginning of Donbas to more like then you go like southwest, and it's more of I think Kherson.
Yeah.
So we kind of had Kherson to the southwest, and we had the Donbas straight to the east. And that's where we staged and got ready. And I remember that day when I was leaving Zaporizhzhia, I had already gone on a. It was funny, like when I guess you're a superstar as an American there, and I didn't let that get to my head once. I had a girl. I picked up a girlfriend in Zaporizhzhia. I still talk to her, believe it or not. I still talk to her, and like I said, when it was funny. If you're in Azov though, you're kind of already a superstar.
Yeah.
If you're an American in Azov, you're like a unicorn in the woods.
Yes. Yes.
So this chick, she actually spoke perfect English. She was actually studying at the college and universities there. She was learning English from professors, and so she spoke decent English actually.
Yeah.
And it was just slow, but she when I told her while I was there, she said, fight for me too, please. She said, fight for me. Don't die. She says, I know you're with Azov. I know those guys like to die. But she looked at me, she said, don't die. And I was like, well, I'm here to fight for you. She said, that doesn't matter to me. She says, just don't die. I'm tired of seeing my, she said this. She said, I'm tired of seeing the sons of this country die. She said, I'm tired of seeing boys die. She says, you're still a boy. Don't die. And I said, I'll try. Well, I'll try. So we then, after, as I said, we went to Pokrovsk, and that was our staging area. And I remember that night we were waiting for the official order to head over to the hangars to then mount up and head to the front. And I was looking up at the stars, dude. And so I'm in Idaho now. I'm not in Colorado. I live here on my family's property. It's a little cabin they own that they sometimes come up to during the seasons when they have time off from work. I live up here. So here in where I'm at in Idaho, I get to see the stars. There's no light pollution. I get to see the stars up here in the mountains. It's beautiful. But there in Ukraine, I didn't get to, I got to see the stars only like really a couple times.
Yeah.
But the only time I ever got to see the stars was because they were polluted by they weren't polluted by light from cities. They were polluted by light from war. Raging fires, cities under attack, destroyed villages.
Diesel in the air. Yeah, it's crazy.
Diesel, yeah. Smoke. It was funny. Like and that night, I didn't get to see the stars. I didn't get to see the stars. That night, it was just pitch black, and by the light, there was only lights of a few cigarettes, stuff like that. And you felt as if you were almost alone in it, regardless of how many guys surrounded you, because everyone was now in their own head. Yeah. They knew what was coming. You know what's coming, but and you don't know what's going to happen. That's what's scary. If you knew what was going to happen, honestly, it wouldn't be as scary. It's like in Afghanistan. You know what's going to happen. You know you're going to win. You know one of your guys might get blown up by an IED, lose his leg. He'll get a Purple Heart, and he'll get disability for the rest of his life. No big deal, right? He's all set. Not Ukraine, dude. Not Ukraine. There's nothing to save you. Nothing to save you. You lose a limb, your limb's gone. Though you'll get to stay at a nice hospital in the Carpathians, but that's it. Yeah. It's up to you to still get home. Now on one leg, or you die. They're not gonna come for your body. They're not gonna come for your fucking body. Your body's gonna be left there. Whatever's left of it. There's nothing there to save you. It's not Call of Duty, dude. Yeah. I'm not a huge gamer myself. My hobbies aren't. I've never really been a big guy in video games. I don't have those hobbies. I've seen a lot of guys comment like, "Oh, these fucking Westerners don't realize that it's not Call of Duty." I already knew that going there, dude. I already knew it was gonna be fucking terrible.
Yeah.
But you never know how terrible it is until it's actually right in front of you. So when I was so I knew it wasn't gonna be Call of Duty, but I tried to downplay it in my head as much as I could because I was scared. I was scared. But I felt expendable, so no one else had to be there, and I just kind of accepted that. And I realized that with what the first true battle that I'd be in that was coming up, that was kind of the whole motto of my unit was, "You're cannon fodder. You're expendable. You're expendable for this greater cause."
And they said
whether
that,
or not
that you're cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. But that night, I did feel like I was alone, and that I was this might be the last night. And so I was sitting there on the steps of this church that had been abandoned and was kind of caved in. It was old. It wasn't hit by any shells. It was just old. I was sitting on the steps of there. I had a cigarette, and it was funny. I decided to poke around inside this church before we were gonna leave, and I was digging around in the shelves and stuff and the dressers, and I found this I saw this like little like blue cloth sticking out, and like, what's that? So I opened it up, and came out on the floor was this Ukrainian flag, and it was like old thin, one of those cheap ones they might have sold on a curbside in Kyiv. But to me at that moment, that little flat Ukrainian flag kind of meant everything to me. So I kind of scooped it up. I took it as a sign, like this might be my fate. This might be what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
Even if it meant I was gonna die. Maybe this was where I was supposed to be at this moment in my life. And so I think that was like fully when I accepted that my death now is inevitable. It's just how am I gonna go out handling it? So, and but I was just so scared. So as I was holding that flag, I then took off my plate carrier and stuffed it in the back. So I carried it with me on my back. And then that's when one of my guys was looking for me. He said, Justin, where the fuck you been? We're going now. We're going. I said, where are we going? He said, we're going to war. Come on. And I was like, it was almost like symbolic. I was sitting there on the steps and he was kind of looking up at me with this pissed off look, like, like, where the fuck have you been? Come on, everyone's leaving.
Yeah.
And I felt like at that moment I had a decision, even though I didn't. Even though I did it, I was halfway across the world, 1,000,000 miles away from my home. My life, my 9 to 5, my little apartment, my hobbies, my activities. None of that existed anymore. But for some reason, I still felt like I had a decision. And I said, okay, all right, let's go. Yeah, let's go.
But if you said right there and then, if you said, I'm not going, what do you think your fate would have been?
I felt like truly it probably would have been worse, maybe, if perhaps they would have said, I feel like they probably would have gone pissed, because that's another part down the line. That's another part of the story that we'll come to.
Right.
That'll make sense later. But I feel like if I said no, I probably still would have been forced to go.
Yeah.
Or I feel like perhaps if I was truly told, because this did happen later down the road to another American that joined our unit who got scared. And even when he found out we're just going to the front line, he got scared. He was actually left to his own devices to go back home. And that was when we had gone back to the front line, but we had gone way, way, way further east. And he still had to get home on his own. So, and like I said, I had no means, no money, no nothing. As much as I wanted to go home, I'd say at that moment, my mom did cross my mind. I almost felt like, like in that decision, I was kind of like viewing it in my head, like it was almost like I could see my mom right then and there. And then I had my guy, my squad member, his name was Woody, and we called him Mad Dog, but we always went by nickname. So that's why I have my nickname Road on my social media handles, because we always went by random nicknames. His name was Mad Dog. I felt like right there I had Mad Dog and my mom kind of like right there. And I always felt like I was looking at my mom. And it was almost like I kind of softly said, sorry, Mom. Sorry. I gotta go. Like I said that in my head. So that's what I said. Yeah, let's go, dude. So that's when I came over to the hangars and, and I think that's what was very reality check war with another reality check with war was how huge it is, like how brutal and raw it is. And when I walked into that hangar, dude, these vehicles were huge. These vehicles were fucking huge, dude. And I think that's what pumped me up and kind of set me on a false mindset. Was I'm looking at all of our tanks and I'm looking at all of our BMPs. I'm looking at all of our BTRs. And these are beefed up vehicles, huge cannons, thick armor, it's fucking crazy. You can't believe this is real. And I was like, suddenly I felt like I really, really wanted to go now. Like, let's fucking do this. We're gonna go. Let's go fucking get them. We're gonna catch them. We're gonna kill them. We're gonna fucking do all this shit. We're gonna go. And I just looked around and I honestly felt like I was kind of like really, if there was a moment I had the most confidence in my life, right then and there, just walking into that hangar and seeing everyone and everybody. I felt like suddenly I wasn't alone. I felt like I had the world with me in terms of what I could wreak and havoc upon. I almost felt like I was a god, because my position was I was placed in one of the one of our BTRs. So there's BMP, which has the tracks on, and the BTR that has the wheels. And I was placed on the BTR, and I was one of their gunners. Just for the position, so I had to dismount, and that's where my squad was placed inside. My little fire team, we got placed inside that we got placed inside that huge BTR, and I had my little spot in that vehicle. But honestly, I felt like nothing's gonna stop me, dude. Nothing's gonna fucking stop us.
Yeah.
And so I decided I wanted to see it all, man. So I remember, dude, just hearing our convoy just start up and rumble inside of that hangar, just it rattled everything. You just felt like it was like this huge beast coming alive, It was like, engines all around you. Everyone just, you just really felt like this is the most raw thing I've ever seen in my life. I had so much adrenaline going through me. I hadn't even seen the front line yet, barely. So, and then that's when our convoy began to do the slow snaking out of Pokrovsk into the dark. And I had no idea where we were going, dude, but I just knew that we were going to fight. I just knew we were going to fight. I later had to find out from different sources on where we had fought and why we had fought there. I had to find out from guys in my unit that were still there when I left to go back to America. But at that moment, I didn't care where I was going. I just knew that my mission now is my job, my fate now is death. I knew I was going to die. I felt like I was going to die. But I felt at the same time that I had control over how, just with how much firepower there was in my grasp, in my unit's grasp. Just is crazy. Still blows my mind to this day, dude.
Yeah.
So but to explain for the viewers in the more tactical term was in the more strategic view to understand, we had to go snaking down south towards this town called Wisny. And Wisny was this town that had a direct almost like a direct kind of like flow of traffic, like a roadway. It was a big highway that started at Wisny and would snake all the way down eventually into the vein work and artery of Mariupol. So what we were going to do was we were going to go down there, and we did do this was the whole time there, we were going to act and disguise ourselves as a quote unquote Russian convoy that was coming to Wisny to support them, because there's open comms, and in the war, there's no closed comms. The Russians and Ukrainians don't have that technology, or it's very scarce. So you can tune into the channel of Russians, and that's what we did. Our battalion commander had his vehicle at the very front of the convoy, and there everyone else was falling behind, and he announced to the comm station in Wisny, to the Russian comm station, that they are, because he spoke Russian, they are a Russian convoy on their way to help reinforce, because they received word that there are Ukrainian forces that are on their way to Wisny to try to reinforce Mariupol. So we told them, it was funny, we directly told them our plan, but we tried to convince them it wasn't us that was coming. So so that whole time I had to actually couldn't speak, because on open comms you don't, they told us. It was funny, one of my squad members, Bucha, he looked at me and he said, Justin, don't speak in English, stay quiet, because there are Russians, we're talking with Russian, do not speak or they'll hear you and the plan will fail. He says, because we must go and fuck Russians. He did this all the time on this end. He's like, we're going to fuck Russians, but you need to shut up. So I'm riding there in my hatch the whole time, and just taking in the view and stuff, and I could smell the diesel and the fumes and stuff and the vehicles from me and behind me. And we were taking the most like fucking backwoods way to get there, dude. We're taking the most back, because I guess in my unit's head, my unit's command's head, like they had in their head, like if we like try to look like we're being cautious, you know, coming down this, they'll believe us. It'll be more believable. So we took like routes through like swamps and forests and plains and hills. So it was like a 12, it was almost like a 12 hour trip, dude.
Mm.
And I was beat, dude. I already gone for like 2.5 cigarette packs with my squad. Oh my God, dude. Eastern Europeans love to smoke.
Yeah.
I smoke a pipe now, but I can't do cigarettes ever again because of Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the morning came, dude, and I got it on film. But I got it on film at the last second because I just was so taken away by it. When I woke up, I was slumped in my hatch. And then when I woke up, I got to pull myself up in my hatch. And I just had to like cover my eyes because holy shit, the sun. But when I could see, like, dude, it was just like the pink evening morning and the forest hills ahead that were rolling with the fog and everything, dude. And this little town that we were about to go through that was right in between where we had come from, Pokrovsk, and then the front. It was just like, it was one of those untouched places, you know, like it was just completely untouched. And I was like, I almost didn't think I was going to war. For a moment, I was just really peaceful. I was like, wow, holy shit. And so what I did was I pulled up my phone, started filming a little bit, and then put it down because we were pulling into town and I could see people. And I was like, dude, I kind of want to interact with people, even if this is waving high versus all my guys. You're cramped in the back of a vehicle, a whole squad of guys in a vehicle that was made for guys that only hold an AK, not like 60 pounds of gear on them, you know, like fucking felt a little too close with them. So I was like, fuck, I'm gonna like not pay attention to these guys. So we're pulling to the town, dude, and there were these people that were farming, they were tending to their little gardens, and holy shit, dude, I was like, it was beautiful. It's like the war hadn't even touched this place yet. And that was what was sad. So as our convoys rumbling by, like, all these people just stop what they're doing. I don't think these people had ever seen this shit in their life, dude. I mean, this is one of those country areas. And there are these kids playing in their yards when they stopped and were just like looking at us like, like aliens landing on Earth. You know, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And there was this little girl who she had a little brother with her too, and there's this little girl, and she was standing on the edge of her fence post, kind of propping herself up, and she was holding up a like a little fist for her of she like holding up one of her little fists, and she was yelling like Slava Ukraini as loud as she could to all the passing vehicles, and all the guys were waving hi to her and stuff and yelling back, you know, Hail Slava to her. And when it came to my vehicle, dude, I did the same. I kind of held up my fist and I yelled it as well as I could to her, and just, yeah, you know. And then that was the last I ever really saw of like anything normal, man, was that little girl cheering on our convoys. We were about to go to battle. And because whereas we left that town, dude, we could hear the rumbling of the artillery. You could hear the fighting going on. So what happened is there was a TDF unit that had entered the area without us knowing, and they were in trouble. So we then decided to scrap the plan of penetrating to Mariupol, and we were just going to infill the company of helicopters that was waiting on standby. So we decided then at the last second, we were just going to slug it out back and forth long enough to distract the Russians so the helicopters could get in, and then we would just, I guess, do whatever. I didn't know. So there was this little TDF unit in the area that had been fighting all day, dude. I don't even think they were like, I think they were only like maybe like half a company. It was like 2 platoons. So, and we found out that the listening was being occupied by Russian naval infantry, and not just like some filming conscripts after the initial steps of the invasion, like trained, you know, pretty fucking, you know, par to par. Like, I mean, it was peer on peer. I was about to go into, dude. But, you know, in moments like that, you're not using those fancy terms. You're just thinking about like, someone's over there waiting to kill me. And you don't know how well he's going to do, how well he's trained. You don't know what he is or who he is or what he has. And it's just that unknown part, dude. Like, you could see, I mean, I could see from my hatch, from my gunner's hatch, dude, I could see fucking everything. I could see things from miles and miles away, but it's still a fog of war.
Yeah.
So when as soon as we left that town, dude, you know, you hear the artillery go, and you're like, holy shit, I'm going towards that. You know, it was just like Hostelball all over again. But I didn't even know it was gonna be like fucking time 10, dude. So, and the whole convoy then began to do a slow, kind of like half circle, and then it stopped, and then the convoy, then at the back we had all of our tanks and BMPs and all of our heavy vehicles, and they started to pass us. And I'm watching, you know, hear the vehicle and the tank going, and I'm watching as these tanks are flying by me, dude. And I'm kind of waving to these guys as they're going by, kind of like trying to cheer them on and stuff. And they're doing the same. And they, you know, they're probably trying to say, they probably like said some, you know, try to make some badass uplifting things to me in their language back at me when they're flying by. And then what we done is we sent the battalion, we just had set the battalion up in chunks. And yeah, it was and then I was sitting there probably for an hour or two, honestly, at the beginning of this battle. And I remember it was funny as it was this long road that then forked to both kind of like the right and left. And I remember just watching all these vehicles going to the left or some going to the right. And that's when, give it like maybe like 10, 15 minutes or so, and you hear the battle just pick up, you hear, and you just hear this battle just pick it up and up and up. And then you wouldn't see these vehicles coming back. You wouldn't see these guys coming back. And after just about when, then it was funny, I was told the orders changed that half the battalion was then going to stay as a reserve. And then what happened is that, so half the battalion stayed as a reserve and actually left the battlefield, left back to the fucking town to stay as a reserve component. And what I figured out was like they played it way too safe and stayed all the way back in the town as a reserve component. And then more of the company that was our second company that was remaining then pulled out too. So then I was only left with one company that was going to go in there. So, and that's what really fucked this day up, because we then got the orders. I'm looking as more guys were leaving. I'm like, saying to my gunner's turn, I'm like, what the fuck is everyone doing? You know? And then I was very confused because people were leaving, people were going, people were leaving. And then that's when it came for my vehicle's turn. And at this point, it might have been only like maybe 4 or 5 vehicles that were left. And it was the battalion commander's vehicle as well. That was in our little group. And that's when the engine started up, dude. I was in this time, I get and then like the engine starting up, dude, and smoke's kicking into your face, like the fumes, the exhaust, and you're like, it was like I said, it's just raw. You know, like in those movies, like, you know, they play the dramatic music and all this and everything's staged, but here, dude, it's loud as hell. Like, I had my active hearing protection on that I had brought with me, and I think honestly it was a pair of Walker Raiders. I think those pair of Walker Raiders honestly saved my sanity, dude, because even when I had those on, it was tremendously loud on the battlefield, tremendously. And then my vehicle kind of lurched forward, and then we started going, and I just kind of hunkered myself down. So what I had done is on my BTR, it wasn't that fancy one, dude. My BTR was not the BTR-4, which is the 30mm auto cannon on it. Mine was the BTR-82. It was the old one. It had that little fucking, you know, little gun on it, and they slapped a jerry-rigged turret on the top of it. So where the gunner's hatch would have been, the commander took over as the gunner and commander of the vehicle. I took over as an extra gunner, and they made a little jerry-rigged hatch on the top of it. They had welded down a little rotating hatch and put a 50 cal there, put a little 50 cal there. So I was sitting behind that 50 cal, dude, hunched down, and as we're coming up to that little split in the road, and then we went right, and it was almost like just right on a dime, dude. The whole scene changed. The road went from nice and smoothed out, because we had traveled like a mile. As soon as we made that little right turn on that fork, it was just, the road was now bombed out. There's mortar holes. There was some abandoned equipment, and like a broken AK here or helmet there, like this whole shit show. What's scary is that we had not even reached the battle yet. The battle was still like a couple miles up. So we're like, you get to hear it now better. So as we're pulling up, the BTR stopped, and because our battalion commander's vehicle had stopped, when he got out and he started talking to the mortar crew that's set up right there. And I was watching as they were setting out and doing their shit, and I honestly almost wanted to just stay with them. But at the same time, I kind of felt safe in the vehicle, but then kind of not,
Yeah.
Later on, I'd learned that when you're in those type of vehicles, you feel like a fish in a can. You feel like a little tuna in a tuna can.
Yes. Yeah.
It's cramped. It's cramped as fuck. So that's why I was glad I got put on a gunner, because no one else in my squad knew how to use a 50 cal. So I got put on the fucking 50 cal, which made me feel good. I had some open air. And then he was talking to that mortar crew, and then he looked at us and he said, he's funny. He looked at me, he saw me in the house, he's like, "Are you ready? Are you fucking ready? We're going to go down. Are you ready?" And then he started laughing and stuff. And with some of his other squad leaders, I was like, bro, fuck, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So he hopped back in his vehicle, and we kept going. And that's when we then went through some woods and found our way back on that left-hand turn. We eventually got back onto that, and then we just made a straight shot for the battlefield, dude. And as we're going by, like more and more, it got worse. Like there was a lot of dust being kicked up in the vehicle in front of me, so I had to kind of like turn my head like that, and I'm looking down on that road, and I could see as we're flying by, dude, just a helmet, a body, a helmet, like band equipment, some pile of blood right there, a shell hole, and then there was one of our tanks, and that's what scared me, was one of our tanks that I'd watched go up ahead of us had already been destroyed. It was on fire. The hatches open and everything, dude, and the corpses were still on fire too. And I was like, holy shit. Like I didn't even say a damn word, but in my mind, I'm like, holy fucking shit, dude. I'm looking at with just the most shocked look on my face. And that's when and at this, it just still did not feel real. It just still did not feel real to me. Like I'm thinking like in my head, this isn't real. This isn't fucking real. It's not really that bad, right? And then right as we got just to the edge of that battlefield, dude, I saw this, like I thought it was a Russian tank at first, when I realized it was a tank facing away. So when I realized it was a tank facing away, and it was this tank that was kind of hidden back at some trees, and I was watching. It was almost like it's slow-mo, dude. And then that tank just works back and went and blew up a building down in the town of Lisny. And then that's when I realized, dude, like I'm in war. This is fucking real, dude. And yeah, so just as soon as we got there, dude, we started taking incoming, like mortar rounds would be falling here and there. And it was the mortar rounds that it's the shit that you can see. It's not just the plumes of smoke you see way in the distance. It's the shit that's almost like falling like maybe 50 yards away from you, or maybe 200, who knows. And yeah, and we finally ran into the remnants of the TDF that had they actually took the town. Then they were pushed out of it, and now they were caught in this middle point, because what happened is we didn't know is that they had this TDF unit zeroed in. So we had just joined them. So now we were zeroed in. And So I'm sitting there in the turret, and there's no vehicles anymore, dude. Like we were sitting on this little side of this ditch, our 5 vehicles, and then my battalion commander's vehicle pulled off, and he had a BMP go in the front, and then he pushed his vehicle back, and as we were waiting, the mortars just kept coming in, dude, and like I had 2 of them hit the trees that were right above us, and I just hunkered down, like and I heard him. I'm like, this active hearing protection really helped because I could hear. It was like so weird. I thought the the Russians were way closer than they were, but then I realized that with artillery it's so far away that first the boom reaches you, then the shell reaches you when it whistles in. So I thought they were much closer. So I thought that's why we were going to win that day, because they were so close. I didn't know they were so far. So I heard the, and then they just blew up right in the trees, and the branches fell down into our vehicle. And I was like, holy fuck. I looked at my guys, I'm like, can I open fire? And they're like, no, don't open fire. I'm like, it was an instinct reaction. I'm like, I want to shoot something now.
Yeah.
I just want to shoot something because I'm tired. I didn't know what I would just want. It would make me feel safer. So as we were waiting, then we got our orders to my battalion commander looked around. He said he spoke in Ukrainian, and I think what it is, he took command of the remnants of that TDF company, and then my guys dismounted, and Fokker looked at me and he said, "We're going to attack now. Remember, don't die." I mean, he got out, and they got behind the BTR, and then everyone started forming up, and we then slowly got out of that ditch, put ourselves on the road, and we're advancing slowly. But dude, it was like the most, what I felt like it was honestly like sheep to slaughter, because these guys didn't have any tactics of anything. It was so primitive. Your vehicles are back to back, like back to back with each other, advancing. And
Yeah.
it was just such a slow creep up there, dude. And I'm sitting there right behind my 50 cal, and I'm watching that front vehicle, and I'm watching the guys behind it, and I'm looking back at my guys, still making sure they're still coming up. And my battalion commander was he dismounted from his vehicle. He had his AK out. He was right there with our guys. And honestly, I came to love my battalion commander, Royal Mormon, my company commander Bot, because our battalion commander, he was right there with us. He was right there with us, too. He was a brave guy. I later found out he had actually been in jail, was released when the war began because he was a political activist on the part of Azov. But he was a cool guy, dude. Honestly, that guy had no fear. It was this little bottleneck of woods to our left, woods to our right, and a bottleneck, and then the road opened up right in the woods. And I'm watching that front BMP dudes, and as it just barely cleared that fucking front opening, it was almost like someone had hit a button, almost like God had hit some type of button, and that to make that thing go boom. Because I guess it might have just been a T-72 somewhere else that hit it. I think it was a Russian T-72 that was hidden in the town and saw the BMP, but it just blew up. It lurched forward. This giant fireball came out the hatch, out the front, and then blew the doors off the back, and it killed everyone behind it, dude. And it killed everyone behind it, dude. And there was no whistle. I mean, there was no whistle, dude. It just happened so fast, dude. I was like so shocked. And then as soon as that happened, we started taking fire. I watched this guys were getting killed. I watched this guys just start hitting the ground, dude. Like they just, as if something that just pushed them over, dude. And watching his guys get struck. And that BMP that got hit, then that turret went sky high, dude. And that fucking thing was just caught on fire immediately. Its ammo must have been ignited, and that was just all hell, dude. The Russians opened up on fire from us, from the wood, from actually both the wood line to our right. They opened up on us from positions there, and then we started taking tank rounds from the front. Fuck. The first BMP was gone, and the second BMP panicked and pulled off to the left and got hit in the side. And then the third vehicle, my battalion commander's vehicle, then start zigzagging out of there. And then there was my vehicle that was left. And my vehicle, my guy, the gunner panicked. The gunner panicked. He fucking left the vehicle. He left the vehicle. The gunner panicked. I heard him cussing and swearing inside. He fucking jumped out, and the driver was sitting there like, what does he do? What do we do? And I told him, I was so scared, dude. I looked out and said, back the fuck up, back the fuck up, back the fuck up, back the fuck. And my guys were sitting there behind me. They had heard explosions and stuff, so they were ready to fight. They couldn't see what was going on. And I looked back at them and I said, get out, get out, get out, go, go, go. Just get the fuck out of here, And then that's when, everyone in front of me, like some guys were trying to just take positions behind some of the burnt vehicles and open fire on the Russians in the wood line, but that wasn't working. Other guys were just fucking running and getting gunned down. And that whole time there, I'm sitting there, dude, I ain't fired a single round yet. I'm like, what the fuck do I do? And then I'm looking at my hands, and then, dude, I swung that fucking turret, aimed my fucking 50 cal, and just started doing this. I just and I didn't see anything. That's the fucking thing. Couldn't see a damn fucking Russian, dude. I just wanted it all to stop. I just wanted it all to stop. I didn't care. I didn't even care if my gun would have done nothing. I just wanted to I wanted them to stop shooting at us. So I started shooting at them. And that's when I did see it's the one time I ever really saw a Russian that was alive. Was my 50 cal jammed, and I couldn't get the jam fixed. I later found out that it had been over greased, and the grease kind of built up, kind of gunked it up. And so I only got off I'd say I maybe got off not even a belt, dude. I didn't get off a belt on that fucking thing. I probably got off maybe 20 rounds. And there's these Russians. The Russians were trying to go around us, and I was in my hatch, and my hatch was starting to take the ping, 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 ping. The rounds were cracking. They crack, they go, and when they crack over your head, but when they're coming towards you, they start zipping.
Yeah.
And so they're going, and they start pinging off my fucking turret. And so what I did is my driver's still there. He was scared. He let go of the wheel. He was holding his head downside there. And I patted him on the shoulder and said, I'm switching to AK. And I grabbed my fucking AK. I pulled it out. I racked it. And then I saw this I saw this Russian that was running, but I couldn't make out his face. Nothing. I just saw his camo, his uniform, and it was almost like he just risen out of the ground, your camouflage. You just kind of rise out of the ground, and it looked like he was running. It was almost like I didn't see a person. And so I swung my AK. I didn't even really aim, and I just let off a burst. I had it on automatic. I let off a burst, and he crumpled. He fell to the ground, and I didn't see him again. And then I saw more Russians, but they saw me, and they were opening fire on me. And I actually threw my AK out of the vehicle and climbed out of the hatch and fell down, and kind of just stayed there. To be honest, I kind of I was too fucking scared, dude. I didn't want to do anything. I almost just kind of wanted to die. Really, I just kind of accepted that I was gonna die here, and I couldn't process that I had just shot someone. I don't know if he died. I don't know if he lived. I know I shot someone. I think I did, and could have been someone else's bullet. But I didn't see a person. I saw a person, but I didn't see so much, who he was. But still, it was so fast paced. It's so surreal. in moments of which somehow become very personal to you, completely shocking, they're very slow. But in moments where it's like, it's not so shocking and it doesn't involve someone else trying to hurt you, that's right there in front of you, it's very fast. So so many things that sped up very fast, and I had stayed right next to my vehicle, and then my vehicle was just taking rounds and stuff, and then an RPG flew past it and hit somewhere behind, and then I took that as my chance to get up and run because I figured they're not going to fire another one. So I got up and ran, and that's when I was just, I didn't know where to go. You know, again, rabbit being chased by the wolf. I didn't know where to go. I was scared. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And so I found it. I saw a ditch. I saw a fucking, you know, a little ditch that got the road, and then there were these ditches, and I fucking threw myself in the ditch, and you know, threw my fucking face down because there were rounds incoming. You know, you still hear the zips and the cracks, and my face had suddenly become moist, and I still had my balaclava on and stuff, but I yanked it off, and I looked at what was underneath me and what I just put my face in, and it was blood, and there was a abandoned plate here right next to me that still had something, chunks of something in it, and I put my face in blood, and I hang on.
Take your time, mate.
Well, yeah, I was just too scared, dude. I didn't move. I didn't move like I did when that white phosphorus came down. I didn't feel like I could walk around or do anything. I was so scared. Just stayed right there. And everyone else was sort of close by. Everyone else was hunkered down just like I was, but they felt very far away, so I really felt alone. And then that's kind of when the fire lifted up, and they had they kind of fucked off, you know. They just kind of left us alone. They really just kind of left us alone. And then that's when it really rained in, was the artillery. They just opened up on us, and for the next like 2 hours we were trapped. We couldn't go anywhere. They were dropping shells behind us. They were dropping shells in the middle of us. They were dropping shells in front of us, and they were dropping shells from like any exit point, any place of which we thought we could exit. And it was the terror. And then that's when we were sitting around there and wondering what we were gonna do. And that's when the rest of our unit, of which had actually made it into the town, had broken out and retreated because everyone was panicking. This day, I mean, most of these guys probably hadn't been fighting, or if they had been fighting, it was they had the winning side. Now we were on the losing side. As you said before, I was the guy in the sandals. Now I was the guy that was losing. We didn't have air support. I didn't have artillery support. I later found out our mortar support got wiped out by grab rockets, and we, you know, so you truly are like, I was truly the Taliban that day, but not in the sense of, you know, the badass way or whatever. I was the Taliban in the sense of I'm getting killed, you know. And so for the next 2 hours we just got pounded. We got the shit pounded out of us. And then that's when then suddenly they taken their fire, and we could hear that it shifted, and it shifted to another part of town. We found out that the reserve, the other half of our battalion that had pulled back as reserves, tried to attack the other side of the town, and so we took that as our chance to then retreat. So first the TDF guys, it was funny, it was our battalion commander told us, we like, we're retreating now. Like, it was funny. Fokker came up to me. Fokker was my fire team leader. He was my squad leader. He took over for Shop. Shop was my platoon leader. Fokker came over and said, "We are going to leave now, but not us, not you, and not me. We have to stay. Everyone else is going." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He says, "We have to cover retreat." Well, the only guys that could cover that retreat was half a platoon of guys now. Half a platoon of guys had to cover a whole company's worth of retreat. So we're watching as the remainder of vehicles that had pulled out of the town flew by us. We watched as our battalion commander shoved guys in the back of his vehicle and fucking booked it out of there and left us. And then we watched as the TDF guys got up and they left. So everyone else had the permission to retreat but us. We couldn't retreat. My platoon leader had no permission to retreat. He couldn't make that decision. He had a radio. And we had to sit there for another maybe 30 minutes or an hour or so. And that felt like the longest in my life, dude. There's sporadic sniper fire, like a lone round would snap here or there, maybe it's a stray, sound like a sniper. Another shell would fall there or here, and half a platoon of guys. That's it. The whole of Russia, Russian forces coming down on you to bear, trying to fucking find you and kill you with their artillery. And just you and half a platoon of guys. That's it. And honestly, I think that's part of why I still feel attached to these guys to this day, why I consider them still my family. Because at that point, that's all I had, dude. That's all I fucking had in terms of anyone I could have some sense of a human bond with, Like I said, my family was a million miles away thinking I'm dead already, or don't even know where I'm at. Friends I didn't tell, or I had a couple friends who probably think I'm dead. And then that's it. And then I had these guys. And so eventually, though, we got orders over the radio to pull out, to retreat, and we did. But the only way out was on foot. No one could send a vehicle. So we had to pull back 5 miles in full gear to a rally point that was out of the range of the Russians. So as we're going on this road, it felt fine. It was funny. We looked back and we watched as the Russians, we felt we kind of duped them. It was funny. We felt like we kind of duped them. We watched as they fucking just worse than what we had just been for. They just completely pulverized our old positions and there was nobody there. And it was just, this was where it was out of a movie. Watching this artillery just destroy, like clumps of earth just being tossed in the air. And this was the first time I'd ever seen kind of artillery from a distance kind of strike down, Most of the time in what the news is reported or you see online in videos is, the plume of smoke in the distance. You have to see as, it actually came in and lurched the earth upwards. And it was like, I felt lucky. I was scared looking at that, but I felt lucky. I felt like, oh, we fucking duped them, we kind of pulled one over them. And then that's when, I think we had maybe 2 miles. Yeah, we had 2 miles left to the rally. And then that's when, one of my squad members, biker yelled out, "Machina, Machina!" And I looked up, dude, and we see as these 2 Hinds flew into the area. And it wasn't, I'm not talking about any high infill. I'm talking about they had just kind of levitated over the wood line, dude. You couldn't even hear them. They just kind of levitated out of the wood line, just kind of appeared, and then they began circling around the areas. And we just fucking threw ourselves into the wood line. We fucking hunkered down, and we're watching as they are flying literally over us and attacking. There's our wood line door to our west. We were traveling north. No, sorry, we're traveling north to the east of us. We're watching as they're attacking the wood line east of us, and then we felt, if you're watching these rockets strike down and they were we're feet above the ground like this, just raking the wood lines over there. And then I felt sort of safe, but then I kind of didn't, because then they circled around and started coming towards us. And dude, holy fucking shit, dude. I literally was watching this Hind. It was mesmerizing. I watched as it fired one rocket, and went, and I could hear impact down the wood line south, down the wood line, and then I watched as it kind of turned right at us. And then it was funny, like my squad member back, he's like, Justin, Dorado. And Dorado means tree. So I didn't know what he was telling me. So I was watching this helicopter. I was like, just watching it. And I'd see this is the moment where I truly felt like this was where my fate was going to end. Like, this is where my life's end. You know, I'm going to die right here. I'm going to get killed by the one thing of which I had probably the biggest fear of that I heard about was their air superiority. And at that time, Russia had air superiority. We had no air support at that time. It was only like May, June, or July that Ukraine finally got air supremacy. So he was yelling at me. He's like, Dorado, go. And then I was like, oh, get behind a tree. And then as soon as I tried going for a tree, then it opened up on us and went, and went off these little bursts of its cannon. And these things just wiped out the fucking trees on top of us and just destroyed everything behind us, dude. Like, they completely missed us. But I'm grateful that they did, because they didn't come back to correct their fire. And then they done their little arc right above us, and then they fucked off back into the eastern wood line, and then just went away. And the rest of the war, dude, I never saw another helicopter again. So, and that was my first battle. Dude. And after that, all those illusions of being this badass, being this fucking, we can do this, being this group of capable, fighters, it just diminished. I suddenly felt like I couldn't do shit. I felt like I had no training. All of a sudden, I felt like, I now had a realistic outlook on the war. So as we were walking back, we saw some equipment that had been left behind, and for some reason it took the attention of my platoon leader Shapa, and he told me, he said, hey, go pick. We stopped and we started picking up this equipment, and I'm like, I didn't know whose equipment it was. But later I'd find out when we got back, when we finally got back to base that day, as we were driving back, dude, I mean, I was tired. I remember that when we got to the rally point, I walked in, dude, I'm seeing this ambulance and the wounded are getting treated, and I saw Gustavo, who's the doc for the recon team. The recon team kind of dissolved, and he switched over to helping the battalion. And I saw him, dude, and I just cried, dude. I was like, holy shit, you're alive. Like, this guy's alive. I'm alive. My guys were alive. My squad survived. And as dark as it is, I didn't kind of care who else died. I just cared that my guys were alive, and but I was breaking down, dude. Like, I broke down for like maybe a minute or so. I mean, he took my AK away from me and kind of unloaded it and said, you'll get this back later. Just take a sec. And and then as at that rally point, the remainder of the battalion, which was now dwindled down to two companies have been lost that day.
So how many men's that? Like 400?
400.
Yeah. 400 in a day. Shit. Just on one battlefront. Fuck.
It was that one day, dude, that whole town got pulverized, that fighting. But we had come in so unprepared and uncoordinated because there were so many different units that were trying to communicate, or command, or squad leaders or platoon leaders or commanders that were trying to make their own decisions within each of their own companies. There was no coordination. Everyone just was killed. And so the remainder of the convoy then mounted up, and we took the long trip back. And this time we took the main roads. We didn't take the same route back. We took the main roads, and I felt like I had kind of failed. Like, what had we just done? What was accomplished? You know, I didn't get the glory end of any of it. You know, I was, as I say, cannon fodder, dude, just cannon fodder, just you know, there to be the meat sack to get punched on. And so as we're pulling back, there was one moment though that kind of made me feel a little bit better. As we were pulling through this town, we pulled back from the same town, and there was this old man that had been in his garden. And as he saw us coming by, he stopped doing whatever he was in his garden, and he stopped our whole convoy, dude, which was, like I said, it wasn't even that big anymore, but regardless, he stopped it, and he was in tears. He was absolutely in tears, because from what one of my guys translated to me was that they heard the fighting. They thought we all had died. So when they saw that we came back, they were so glad. And so like everyone in this town knew, like, I mean, it had just been recently Easter Sunday. This whole town was like giving us paskas and samahon and tea and food and, you know, everything, flowers. And it was this old man got up on one of our vehicles, and from what one of my guys told me, said, you know, he's like, he wants to get a picture with everyone. He wants to get a picture with his heroes. We were his heroes to him. And if only, like I said, man, if only he knew what happened that day. But I guess if they got to spend another fucking day without being taken over or their village fucking flying or whatever, I guess that meant something to them. So I guess maybe I did win that day, because they got to live. They got to fucking enjoy another day. It doesn't matter if my day fucking sucked. They got to enjoy another fucking day of a normal life in that whole shit show. So when we got back to base after that whole little celebration, I really felt like this was the worst part of it, honestly, in this whole war for me, dude. Was this whole war, the worst part, dude, was when I got back inside of that little church. We had all kind of sat down in there, and the guys had set up this little, they'd asked for the equipment back from that I carried, and I didn't know it was one of our guys. He had actually been our one of our platoon. He was our platoon medic, and I didn't know that at the time. But when I handed off my his plate carrier that I'd been carrying the whole time, to one of the guys, they'd set up his armor and his helmet and his weapon right at the center of that little abandoned church, and everyone was just kind of looking at it and stuff. And when I walked in there, I saw the same equipment. I didn't know until I looked right at it, dude. And I asked, "Who is this?" They said, "This was our platoon medic." And I said, "Where is he?" And they said, "He died. He died on his way off the battlefield." And you could see the little shrapnel that hit just right at the top of the lip of where his plate had been. It just penetrated right there. And then in his helmet, he took shrapnel. And I think this was the one time in that whole war which I saw everyone kind of act like they cared about the loss. Because when I bent down and I picked up his helmet, and he had his little, like, he had his, on one side he had the Ukrainian flag, and then on the other side he had his little Viking flag patch there. It was the battle flag with the crow on it and stuff. And I just kind of ran my hands over the helmet and stuff, dude, and I just kind of held him close, and I felt like I was holding him close to me, you know. Yeah, I just felt like maybe that was one time I had a human connection. It's a normal moment where I could be giving some privacy for that, you know. I suddenly just didn't care about fighting anymore. I didn't have any bloodlust in me anymore. I just felt a little sad was all. So yeah, yeah, it was I'm glad though they at least took the time to remember him because I never saw a moment like that again for the rest of the war. But I bet after that, I was glad I was alive. I was glad that I was not dead. I mean I took a lot more purpose and initiative in my life to stay alive there. You know, I was definitely more cautious because it mattered now that I stayed alive. And the rest of that war, we went back to Kyiv. I never thought I'd see that place again. We went back to Kyiv. We took time off. You know, the company needed, the whole battalion needed to re-outfit itself. They needed to get themselves squared away. But the main agenda now was training. That was very clear and apparent. And we stayed away from the front line for more than sure as hell 2 weeks. We stayed away for almost 4. And that whole time it was go, 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 because we knew that if we were going to see the front line again, we were going to make sure that what happened was never going to happen again, you know? So yeah, that was I think that was the biggest, the hardest moment for me in that war was that the first real experience, you know. Yeah, it's a small take it, you know.
Yeah, mate.
So
yeah.
So yeah, that time off was pretty nice, but it didn't last forever because then we did get orders to go near the front, but not right back to it. And so we stayed at some towns on the outskirts of Zaporizhzhia again because then we were getting orders to help in the Donbas. So I was gonna that's pretty much almost like the second to final chapter of my story. There was the Donbas because yeah, that was even worse. Just in its tremendous intensity. You know, when we got back to Kyiv, it was we found out that when the Donbass was actually heating up tremendously, the Donbass just had exploded with, you know, engagements and fighting and fences and whatnot, because I guess the Russians were still amounting their troops. They were still like amounting their troop force on the east front then, because they needed to after they had just got back from the failures in the north. So near Kyiv and Kharkiv and places like that. So yep, we trained for like 4 weeks. Just train. And that was the first time I really saw a schedule that came in front of my face because we had a little group chat. And you know, I really felt like I was back in a regular army because now I had a schedule. I actually had to show up to this stuff. I couldn't just fuck off and do whatever, you know. It felt nice, but it was tough training, you know. And I will say, Azov is just as much as intense as they are in their beliefs as they are their training. Usually the day start off with PT for running 3 miles, 2, and then 3 miles back, so you run like 6 miles, and then, but it was more like slow jogs. After that, you do some push-ups and sit-ups, and after that, you'd run a little obstacle course, and then you take like 2-hour break. After that 2-hour break, then you get up and you'd have you know, lunch, and then you put on all your full gear and you do like shooting drills and tactical drills and all that. we started training for CQs, close quarters combat. We started training for that. We started training how to clear rooms, this and that. And I think this is where they messed up, because the Donbas outside of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk is not really a CQC environment. It's all flat, rolling hills, creek beds and rivers, patches of woodline here and there. I guess what they had in their mind was that they were going to train for, going into these villages. I think that was their objective. I think they just felt like, we fucked up. We couldn't take listening. We failed in helping in the operation to, help Mariupol. So now we're going to just try to still stick to our special operations role to the best we can. So, yeah, it was an intense 4 weeks, dude. At that time, I think I became more isolated. And that's when I first experienced shell shock. Was you could definitely tell who was in combat and who had been not in combat. And usually after that experience, I kept myself more reserved. I didn't want to really talk to anyone. Just wanted to do my training. I just wanted to wait until we were going to combat, and then I just kind of stuck to that. I was definitely more of a reserved individual. And I was sort of more mean too. I became more mean. I became more mean towards people who kind of fan it. Like we said, we had an American who just recently joined our unit, and he had like this fantasized idea of what the front line would look like. And he too had just came to Ukraine, but he had been in Kyiv with the Hospitallers. The Hospitallers are like a medical, like this huge medical group, like this huge medical unit that was based out of Kyiv that would go out across the country to do like medical supply runs. They would give first aid, et cetera, et cetera. So he'd been there. So when he came to our unit, he had like this, he still had a fantasized version of like what it was like. He's like, oh, the Russians are nothing. They can't fight. They can't do this and that. And then one day he sat down next to me, and he started talking, and I said, you know what? It's funny how guys like you don't got no fucking clue. Like, what do you mean? And I said, you got this delusion in your head that it's that easy, and and I think that's I still feel proud that I demeaned what his delusions were, because it saved him from going to the front line. When I told him about our most recent battle and engagement, he had that reality check. He had that reality check, and he looked at me and he didn't realize what he was getting into. And after I talked to him, told him everything, he just panicked. He panicked and said he needed to go home and this and that. And I looked at him, and when he mentioned the word home, because we were in the cafeteria and we were eating. When he mentioned home, I said, "There's no fucking home, dude." I said, "There's no fucking home. I had a home. I don't got a home, and I'm here." I said, "My job is to simply just train and fight and train and fight and train and fight. That's all I am." I said, "So unless that's what you want to be, then you better go find your home again, because you're not going to see it." So the same day, he'd been with our unit for only about a couple weeks, maybe like a week. Yeah, I think a week. And then he called in a taxi. He used that what was it? That app. There's an app that
Bolt or Uber or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He got one of those. Car showed up and took him all the way back to Kyiv.
Mm.
And as much as I felt like an asshole, to this day I feel like I saved his life.
Absolutely.
So, but me at the same time brooding and keeping to myself really made me mean. It really tore me apart. And at that point, I kind of forgot. I really truly had forgotten about why I was there. I just was fully embraced in this like depressive attitude of war, of what it was. So, and I think that's what brings us to the final part of my experience there, was when I realized kind of who I had become. So when we were done training, we then had our final, well, this was my final experience there. But when we had our orders to go back to the front, we were given our orders to well, go out to Pisky. Pisky is a town that's right outside Bakhmut. And Bakhmut, I would go there twice. First time with my unit, and then later with a NGO. I'll go there with a humanitarian group, but first I went there with my unit. Pisky was contested. The Ukrainians held it, but they were losing control. And so we were given our orders to go there and assault it. But it was going to be like clearing it home to home, home to home to home. And so that's why we trained for Siki, for close quarters. And that, and then it was the same thing. We actually went back to Pokrovsk. We used the same place again with the hangars and everything where we kept our vehicles a month or so prior. But this time we had new vehicles. We had the BTR-4, we had a couple T-80s, we had Humvee. We were decked out. We were pretty decked out, dude. And I had, then again, in that same hangar that I had been in a month or so ago, I didn't have the same feeling of unstoppability. I had this feeling of realism. Looking around at everyone, and I was kind of thinking like, okay, what's our weaknesses? How is this? What's this vehicle gonna do? What am I gonna do? You know, like, how, is everyone actually taking? Did everyone take our training serious? You know, and then the same thing. Did we mounted up and we headed out, and we left. Pokrovsk was a lot further than Bakhmut, so we had a lot more time to go. But by the time we passed through Bakhmut and got to Pisky, again, we reached there like late morning. I'd say around maybe 10 or 11 that time. And this goal though was that we were gonna do like the most primitive thing again too, like the Russians had, was we were just gonna shell the shit out of the city. And when once it was shelled, once we believed everyone was dead, we were gonna move in. Just like World War I, dude. It was like the Somme. When everyone at the Somme fucking got out of their trenches and walked towards the Germans after they believed they had been shelled to death and they were still alive. Yeah, it's just like that. So, but that night prior, right before we mounted up and headed out, I was looking at this is when I actually did get to see the stars, you know. And I was like laying on the ground underneath the trees and the grass, and I was looking up at the stars, and I was thinking, you know, I was thinking about having a family, you know, again, and I was thinking about like realistic things, you know. I actually did start thinking about home. I did start thinking about, you know, things I used to enjoy and stuff. And I told myself, I said, well, if I get out of here, I'm gonna make sure I can enjoy those things again. And if I don't get out of here, then, well, I'll try to think of those things as hard as I can. So maybe those are the things I get to enjoy if I die, you know. I didn't know what was gonna happen if I died. You know, I didn't pray or anything like that, but I just thought of the best things that I could. I really did think of the best things that I could. But the morning of, when we finally arrived to the battlefield, we had posted up against we posted up in these wood lines. And in the Donbas, the wood lines are only these crisscrossing sections of trees, because what they do is they separate all the crop fields. But the thing is that the Ukrainians hide in these areas as much as the Russians. So it's very easy to know where your enemy is because there's nowhere else to hide. And we had to stay in these wood lines though too, because the Russians had mined all the fields in the area. So we had to make sure we were very careful on our assault into Pisky, because if we took any other alternate routes, we could have gotten blown up. So, and we didn't do the same thing that we had done where we tried to like you know, pretend we were Russians and this and that. We didn't do it. We scrapped that, and we straight up just had positioned our artillery far away and just had pounded the hell out of that place for hours and hours and hours. And And being in that same scenario, I had better gear. I had actually dropped my old plate carrier. I had worn an LBT there. I switched it out for a JPC plate carrier. I had a grenade launcher on my AK this time. I had a new AK. I carried a couple extra rocket launchers and this and that. I had more tourniquets. I had a new helmet. I got way better multi-cams. I was like decked out, man. I was ready to go. And so when I got out of my vehicle and I'm sitting there, it had been raining that day, and it was just a nice smell. There was a nice smell to the air. But then when the rain went away and the heat came out, it was crazy, because not only did the steam from all the ground rise up and make it a little foggy, but at the same time, the smell of the artillery, putrid, fucking, it was gross. And that made me nervous. That just rattled me, because my first battle wasn't that first battle down where we tried to help at Mariupol, try to penetrate in to get there. That was like at least a whole day's worth of fighting, you know. And now going into this, it was like I had that same scenario in my head that I did not long ago, you know. So I was nervous. And so that's when I started. I think this is where I really showed my first signs of shell shock was not, it wasn't just isolation. I knew that was a component, but I was shaking uncontrollably. I think it was just months and months of being rattled and my body trying to process it while still in a war zone. I just shook, dude. I shook so bad. And then my guys saw that and they're like, "Are you cold? You cold?" And they started laughing and stuff. They're like, "Oh, you're all cold. You should have bought a jacket." And I was like, yeah, jacket. But I was like, and that was what I said in my head. I didn't say it to them, man. I was still sitting there shaking terribly. I was so nervous. I didn't want to go that time. If I had the decision right then and there, dude, I would not have gone. I just wouldn't have. I didn't feel like I was dying, because what was scarier was, it was scarier to try to live versus trying to die. I've realized after Ukraine that just accepting death is easy, but trying to live, that's so hard, because now you have to make decisions of which are up against, you know, actions of your enemy that are meant to kill you. You know, when people are trying to kill you, it's hard to stay alive. So to this day, I still don't know how I made it back. I still don't know. So, but then when I brought my nerves down, then this was where our mistake was made. Was we had left our convoy out in the open. We tried to back our vehicles up into the trees, but what happened though is there were drones in the area. There was a Orlan command station that was right nearby. And they had their Orlans that were circling the area, and they had spotted our whole convoy. And this was only though a company. This wasn't a battalion. The battalion got after our first battle, which was such a shit show, our battalion experienced a lot of desertions, and these guys deserted to other units, or they were wounded, or they were dead. So really our quote unquote battalion was like a company or two. So, but they still tried to lie their way through by saying, "Oh no, we've recovered our ranks and stuff because we're under the 5th Special Purpose Regiment for Azov." So when the Azov command was asking our unit, "How are you doing?" they lied about their numbers. they lied about their numbers. So I probably was trying to do the job of like a lot more guys than just one guy. I was probably trying to do a job of like maybe 5 or 10 guys. You know, it's nuts. So that's where we made our mistake, was with the Orlans. The Orlans have been circling. They'd spotted us. And I only know this because on Telegram there is a channel called Intel Slava. And Intel Slava is a pro-Russian channel that posts a lot about the war. They sometimes make stuff up, sometimes lie about progress, or they actually post the truth. And they posted the truth on my unit, because that day I didn't know this until a little later when I would return back through Bakhmut, was that they posted footage of our of our company that had come under attack by the Orvans, that was spotted by the Orvans. And what happened is that the Orvans had spotted us. They called in the artillery, and this was right when we were getting ready to assault. When our artillery had ceased fire, actually what happened is that they had completely missed Pisky. They completely missed Pisky. What they had done is that they had got the wrong coordinates. They had completely overfired right behind the town, and they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing to the town. So now you have one company that's going to take on a reported company or more in Pisky to do the job. So when we mounted up, we got on our vehicles. I was no longer on any gunner's position. I was just a regular, soldier in the back of a Vic. We were beginning our circle around the wood line. We were going to go on the other side, hook around to a Huey on the other side of the wood line, and then push straight through towards Pisky. And what happened though is as soon as our convoy was moving, we came under artillery fire. And that was so scary, because I watched from my little hatch in my vehicle as the artillery rained in, and everyone just panicked. And what happened is that all of our vehicles in our company dispersed, and everyone was running out. And not even everyone had even been in their vehicles yet, because we just got the order to mount up and go attack. And I was watching, and it's still crystal clear in my head, man, as we watched. I watched as the artillery rained in. But what was weird is that this artillery was white smoke and everything. I saw those big flashes of orange and red, but what happened is there was just one guy. He was running into the field, and then I watched as a shell struck near him, and then he just disappeared, dude. And that was the last thing I ever saw of the whole world as Shapa had closed the hatch. And I just remember actually saying this out loud for the first time, "Oh shit," and it just still plays clear in my head to this day, dude. I still see him get hit and killed all the time, dude. And that's when I think it was the scariest moment in my life. Was you can't see a thing, but you can hear everything, and you don't know what's going on out there. And you know that most likely being in that vehicle, no one wants to be in those vehicles, dude. No one. I wouldn't want to be in them. I hated being in them, to be honest, because you were guaranteed that if you got hit in one of those things, you were going to die. And I honestly felt like that's what was going to probably happen, but I kept in my head, I was like, okay, we're driving away, we're getting away, this and that. But we didn't know where we were going. I didn't know where you're going. You can't see where you're going. You put your trust in this random guy who's driving your vehicle. Put the random trust in this guy who's the gunner of that vehicle to keep you safe and to kill anyone that's going to try to kill you. But as we were, I guess what happened is that as we were driving away, and this is the footage that got posted, my vehicle hit a landmine in those wheat fields, and it flipped onto its side, and that's when I just blacked out. I was out, And at that moment, I think right before I was thinking about that was, I don't know where I'm going again. It's like I had the first time. I don't know where I'm going. I just know that I have an objective, but instead of trying to kill, my objective now is I just want to get out of here and live. I had in my head that I was going to try to go home somehow, maybe convince one of the other Americans that were still around in the unit, maybe was, hey, let's go home. But when those lights went out in my head, I was like, I honestly thought I died. I thought that was it. And I was in and out. I remember that when I woke up, I remember I was in a weird position when I came to, and I passed out. And when I woke up again, someone was dragging me. And when I passed out, and I woke up again, I was face upright in this wheat field. I passed out, and then I woke up again. I didn't wake up until I was in a hospital bed, you know. And in that hospital bed, there were it smelled really bad, you know, bloody bandages, all that. So what happened was my vehicle did take a hit. Me and Mad Dog, the first guy that ever asked me, you know, are you coming with? The guy who asked me if I'm coming to the first battle, you know, he dragged me out, and he got out of that vehicle. He dragged me out of it, and but he had taken shrapnel to one of the arteries in his thigh and passed out. He bled out and died, I was told. Everyone else in the vehicle had been killed. They've been crushed, or they were shrapnel that had penetrated and killed them, or whatever. So I lost my whole squad that day. I lost everyone. And I found that day that the battle was unsuccessful. We did nothing to help Pisky. And we once again, now we weren't even a existing regiment. We were done. And someone, I guess, had just come by and they were looking for casualties, and they found me and they scooped me up, and I ended up in a hospital in Zaporizhzhia again. I wasn't told I had to find out all this information for secondhand sources for everything, and up until I actually got confirmation. But I was the only person that actually made it out of that vehicle. No one else did. So when I came to that hospital, I had taken shrapnel to my legs. I had taken I had hit my head very fucking hard to where they actually had to they did MRI scans and all that. And honestly, I mean, I was in and out. I was still like out of it. You know, I wasn't blacked out and passed out, but I was on such heavy meds and stuff like that. And yeah, it was bad. They yeah, my whole unit was destroyed, and you know, people I ever called family were the new people I called my family were dead. So yeah, that's what ended pretty much my whole experience there. Anything I did after that wasn't fighting. I couldn't fight. That was the end of the road. Like I said, that whole war, I never got the glory end of it. I never got the glory end of that whole war, dude. I never got to raise any, like, you know, on those videos where you see some Ukrainian soldier raising his colors over some liberated territory. I never got to participate in a successful battle. I was on the ass end of all that, of the worst of the worst. But yeah, so that pretty much after that whole incident, that pretty much concluded the entire experience of the front lines for me. You know, I healed up in the hospital, and then when I was discharged from that hospital, there were still some other foreigners that were still around from my unit that stayed around and stuck around the area of Zaporizhzhia to make sure I was okay. And then they said, "Hey, we're going home. We're going home. we try to scrap together some money and may just fly you back. You want to come with?" And I said, "Sure, let me think about it." I wasn't sure what I was going to do if I went home, because I knew that my parents probably would not take me in. I didn't know anyone that would. And so I kind of debated just going home, dude. The one thing that always sat in the back of my head the whole time I was there, do I want to really go home? Do I really want to have a life? Or do I want to stay here and just ruin it, throw it away, you know? And the conclusion of that question came clear when I was in a hotel in Zaporizhzhia. And this was the final leg of my journey in Ukraine. Was as my guys were debating what to do next, and this was, the only people that really were foreigners that were left around in my unit was a Welshman, a German, and my Carlo. Carlo though got wounded that day when I got wounded too. Carlo was wounded, and so he actually is still in the country today. He's just staying there, healing up. He wants to go back to fight, whatever. But he was still around, and then there was another American, but his name was Chris. But he had a place in Germany that he was living, so he and the German were kind of together, and they were planning on going back to Berlin. And when the Welshman was probably want to go home too, and then there was, Carlo, he wanted to stay. So no one could technically really like go anywhere with me. So they said, like, if we get you a ticket, we'll send you home, but that's that. So it'd be up to me to get back on my own. So as they were trying to scrap together some money or figure out how they could get me home, I was at a hotel in Zaporizhzhia, and it was this one hotel where a lot of people passed through. You had guys. Oh, sorry, it's my alarm. But I was in a hotel, and there was a lot of humanitarian groups that were there, other unit commanders, etc., etc. This is actually where I met Andrew Boletsky. This is where I met Andrew Boletsky. I met him at this hotel. And I didn't mention to him that I'd been fighting for him. I didn't mention that I'd been fighting for his unit that he was in charge of, Azov. So just kind of said hi to him, had some coffee with him. It was kind of neat. But this one group I did meet, they were called the Wild Geese, and the Wild Geese was this humanitarian group that did supply runs and stuff, but very like ragtag supply runs, no outside support, barely any funding. But
I haven't heard much about them.
Yeah, they were just kind of on the seam of their pants, but they still did supply runs. And so how I met them was I met a member of parliament. His name was Harash, a Ukrainian parliament member. His name was Harash, and he was sitting at the bar. I walked up to him and I introduced myself. He had some funny clothes. I thought he was American, but his accent sounded British. I thought he was a British or German guy, more German than British. But I thought he was a German. So when he told me he was Ukrainian, I'm like, well, you're pretty well versed for Ukrainian, in terms of speaking English. So he and I just chatted, and I told him about my story, and he was like, well, if you're looking to get home, we have some other Americans here. Maybe you can hang out with them and join our group. And I said, well, who are your other Americans? And he pointed across the hotel, and sitting on a couch was this woman from ABC News named Kate Jones. And I was like, oh boy. I was nervous, man, because I had not at that moment told anyone outside of Azov that I was fighting with Azov. But I wasn't sure how another American who had not been fighting would feel about, American who fought with the most renowned right-wing group in the country.
Yeah.
So when I approached her, I kept it really subtle that who I'd fought with. I just said I just been fighting. I told her why I came for Sasha. I told her what I had experienced. And then at the end of the story, man, and she was like, if you give me just a little bit of your story, you can come with us. But it was funny. She did that more so just kind of convince me because I'm more of a give and take guy.
Yeah.
So I joined her group. I joined her group with the Wild Geese. And that's when she said, however, though, I'll take you home, but you got to do one more run with me back to the front line. And I really debated that, dude. I really debated that. I was like, I don't know. But I felt like I need to get home. And I felt like this is probably the only one moment I'm going to have to get home. So I said, okay, cool. Yeah. And so I hopped on with her group. So we traveled back to Bakhmut. And that's when I actually got to see the city really for the first time. We stayed in one of their hotels there. And we did a one-day supply run to the front line at Lysychansk. When we got that whole time, man, though, the thing about it that made me realize I needed to go home was my shell shock at that point had just tremendously gone up. Like when I had no longer had a gun, my equipment had actually been from the remnants of my unit. When I went to go pick up my equipment, I figured out that my battalion commander had been wounded as well. And so my company commander had taken over as the battalion commander, and that was Bot, the short guy that pulled me off the truck that day when I was supposed to fly to Mariupol. He felt like everyone had abandoned him, and he blamed all the foreigners for abandoning the unit, even though I'd been wounded, because there were other foreigners apparently that had survived that day and wanted to leave. And so he pretty much had taken all of our equipment, he took our weapons, he took this and that, and he kicked us all out, every foreigner. So when I figured that I had no equipment and stuff, I was just in the regular, like the one pair of normal clothes that I brought with me. And I had no gun, I had no weapon, I had no nothing. So I was like almost, I felt naked, you know?
Yeah.
And so when we were out there giving supplies to these people and stuff, to the soldiers, that's when Lysychansk was just beginning to become encircled, and it really like the intensity of that fighting really amped up. And I remember Kate, though, her being a journalist, she wanted to stay in the area and really get the scoop of the stories, because she had found another foreign unit, like I think it was a contingent of the Foreign Legion that had been tasked with tank hunting in the area of Lysychansk. And so she wanted to do a report on that. And while she was doing that interview, dude, like we had artillery falling in around where these guys had been using as a base. The fighting was getting closer and closer. And so I kept bugging her. And and she could probably tell you, I'm losing my mind, dude. I was losing my fucking mind. I had nothing to protect myself. And so she wrapped up when she was done with just interviewing one of the guys there, she then wrapped up there, and we went to a hospital. And that the whole area there though too was coming under fire. So after we're done at the hospital, then we got back to Bakhmut, and I felt like we were okay, cool. We're gonna get out here. And then I heard that the member of parliament, Harash, he wanted to do one more humanitarian run, just for the hell of it. Because we had extra supplies. He's like, I want to get rid of these though. These are for my people. He's like, we're gonna do one more run. And dude, I was like, I looked at Kay, I said, I feel like you tricked me. I was like pissed at her. I'm like, you're keeping me here, doing this and that. You're fucking with me. You need to fucking get me home and this and that. She was like, I promised you I'd get you home. Just stick with me. I'll take care of you. I promise. And so I trusted her. The next day came, and we did that humanitarian run. But while we were coming back into Bakhmut, the Russians had actually already almost halfway encircled the place. And so I heard that though later on in this war, I heard that recently they were pushed back away from Bakhmut. Now they haven't even taken it still. But at that moment though, they'd really amped up their attack. And what happened though was that the last morning we were in Bakhmut, Russian aircraft had bombed some apartments nearby. And there was one of the reporters that was with Kate. He was a British reporter, and he gone there and he found that, you know, he came back crying and stuff because he saw there was a little boy that had died and stuff. And you know, Kate wanted to go see if she could get pictures of that. And I went with her because I'm not gonna lose this chick. I'm not gonna lose the one chick that got me. Let's say she can get me fucking home.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to get lost out here. So when we went there and she was taking the pictures and shit, I saw what was happening and I just fucking snapped, dude. I broke down and I was pounding the hood with my fucking fist and shit. Because I just was snapping, dude. The shell shock had hit. I was so antsy. I couldn't even like do anything on my own. I just burst. I just cried, dude. And so that's when she realized how much I was, you know, we were just falling apart. And then she decided, yeah, we'll go now. So she took me back in the van with the other reporter. We went back to the hotel, but then actually when we soon got back to the hotel, dude, we came under shelling. The whole city of Bakhmut came under shelling.
Yeah.
And I remember we ran to that basement when the shells were falling in, and I twisted my ankle, and I was even more scared because now that was like outside of me getting hurt and hit with shrapnel after my vehicle had hit a mine. Honestly, after that, dude, I felt like I was just never gonna get home. Just more shit on more shit on more shit was happening, and I was like, I might as well just give up, you know.
Mm.
But Kate really kind of kept me all together, dude. She kept me intact. When they looked at my sprain and she looked at my ankle and said, "Can you walk?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Why?" She's like, "We're gonna go back to Kyiv. I'm gonna get you home." So she by herself took me out of that basement, dude. Got me in a truck, and honestly, dude, she looked at me and because I was falling apart, dude, because I could hear the shells more and more, and she just hugged, she like kissed my head and she hugged me and she held me in her arms. She said, "It's gonna be okay. You know, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna get home." And I did. I did get home, obviously, but
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it without her, dude. That whole time, that whole war, dude, I didn't have nothing to my name. Nothing. I was fighting simply for a cause, never got paid, nothing. And it was because of her and a lot of other people that got me back here. But yeah, as soon as I got back here, dude, it was a whole different world. People, people asking me, like family members asking me, or friends I've made at new jobs I've tried to hold down here and shit, you know. Um, just asking me, like, did you get paid? Or how many of those guys did you kill? Did you fight? This and that. And it's like, you realize how many people just don't have an understanding of what war is. How many
Yeah.
people don't understand what's going on, you know? Like when we were destroying people's houses simply to get rid of Russians, you're destroying people's homes, their legacies, you know? Civilians getting caught in our crossfire. I was told that later on, I was told by one of my buddies, the Finn Karo. I was told that he'd found out that actually the first village, Lisny, was occupied still. So we had opened when we were fighting in that we had civilians that were in that town of Lisny. Cool. We were trying to go help Mariupol, but at the same time, we were killing civilians in the process, probably, you know. And for what? You know, for what? So yeah, but getting back home I realized I needed to go back home because when she put me in that truck with some other humanitarian members of the Wild Beast, she also, the whole trip back was, it was crazy how well Ukraine did do though, from pushing the Russians out of their country. I mean, but you could still see the remnants of it. But when you went for the places that were a little untouched, you did feel like, you know, the war was over, you know, like the war didn't exist. And I felt like a fish out of water, to be honest, dude. I felt like a fish out of water.
And
You know,
how are you going now?
still fish out of water. Maybe a little closer to the water, but still fish, dude. Because when I was in Kyiv, the war was over in Kyiv.
Yeah.
There's still apartment buildings that still had, you know, rubble and remnants of the shelling, but there were no air raid sirens. And by the time that I was off the front line and I had gone out of Bakhmut, thanks to Kate, it was like May or June. So
Yeah.
I didn't get back home until July. So I would say, yeah, there's no fighting. There's no sign of the war. People were returning. Everything was normal. So when I wore a uniform, people kind of looked at me a little weird, you know, versus when I was there in the beginning, people were very supportive and friendly, and they knew why you were there, why you were in uniform, why you were carrying a gun. When I got back there, no one was carrying a gun. No one was doing anything.
Yeah.
The only people that had guns were the police. It was almost like it was a normal city again. Almost. Pretty damn close.
And how did
And
that
then
make you feel?
Man, it made me, I'd say at first, it made me feel like almost like I'd done nothing. Almost like I'd done nothing, because if I knew that this was the outcome that was going to happen, maybe this could have been accomplished without me. So why did I do what I did? Why did many other guys die for this? If this was already going to happen, this was the main goal. So, but then at the same time, when I met Mishna again, the very man that which got me on this whole journey, he was actually in Kyiv again. And I got to see him one last time before I left Ukraine. And he and I were both in uniform, and he and I were walking around, and we went to the St. Sophia Cathedral. We saw that together, and then we went to the arch. It was this like big arch of which was supposed to like symbolize, it was built like in the Soviet Union era, and it was kind of like it's supposed to be like Ukraine's quote unquote unity with Russia. Maybe that existed. I don't know. Maybe it did exist between Ukraine and Russia. I hope one day it does. But they had put, it was like we saw that and we looked over across the river and we could see like the west side of Kyiv and the east side, and we saw like the island in the middle, and people were like, you know, some girls gave us a couple flowers. People said Slava Ukraini to us. We had older folks that were giving us hugs and thanking us. You know, but really at the same time, he and I were just kind of isolated. We just kind of were doing our own thing, and no one really kind of bugged us much. And when I looked at him, I said, do you think this would have happened anyways? I was like, do you think this would have happened anyways without me? And he looked at me, he said, everything that you did is what helped made this happen, with it, and even if you don't know. I was like, wow. And so he and I got some pizza and some ice cream, and we were just kind of hanging out, walking around the whole city. We were enjoying the sights, and the place was really going back to normal. And I still try to commit myself to this day that I feel like I did do something. Maybe I did actually save this country, and maybe I did help those people in that village that got to enjoy maybe more days or weeks or maybe months with it without having to deal with Russian attack or occupation. Who knows? But when it came time to go to leave the Ukraine, it's not. I don't know if I wanted to leave or if I wanted to go. I was stuck in the middle.
Yeah,
because I was just like, the more and more that we got, because Kay and I, we took a train out of Kyiv train station, got to Medica. Medica is a bordering town between Poland and Ukraine. We got to Medica, and at Medica, we crossed the border. As soon as I got into Poland, there's no signs of the war.
there's nothing. It's crazy.
There was nothing. I saw fields of which I would have walked through that had mines, or I would have seen dead bodies in that were now had deer or cranes or birds, you know, houses of which people were just living normal lives. When we went to Krakow, there were tourists. There were tourists from America. There were tourists from everywhere. It was a normal city, a normal life. There was a functional airport, and just 9 hours away, there was still war going on.
Yeah,
and it was crazy, dude.
It's insane.
I mean, so she and I spent a week. When she and I left Krakow, we went to the UK, and even more in the UK is when I realized no one has an idea what the fuck's going on. In the UK, everyone was like asking me, you know, all these English people asking me, you know, how many of those guys did you kill? How many of this and that? You know, what's it like over there? This and that. You know, like I hear it's going really well, and then there's practically no fighting anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, it bugged me, you know, like, is this what everyone fucking thinks? You know, is this what everyone is fucking thinking right now? And what was even worse is that you couldn't talk to anyone about what you want. No one wants to hear it. You go through that, and people want to put you in a padded room. People don't want to deal with you. And so, and I realized that, like I said, I began to really have problems with this war. Really affected me because when I was still in the country, I didn't really like have any. Well, I had one incident. There was a thunderstorm that came from Kyiv, and Kate and I were staying in her little apartment that she rented out, and that thunderstorm really put me on fucking edge, dude, because it reminded me of artillery, especially at night.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that after my very first battle out at Lisny, that before we went to Kyiv, though, we were given our orders to dig in. We actually did have to go back to the front to support them. We got like a break, sure, but then the very next morning we had to go back, and then the next night I dealt with shelling, dude. I lived in a hole. I've been in a hole for a couple nights, and shelling and rockets and all that shit, dude. You know, So that thunderstorm really rattled me up, and I couldn't deal with it. I still can't deal with it. I work a new job now, and I work in an auto shop, and there's like air hoses and tires, and when a tire expands, it pops. The rubber makes a popping sound when it expands, and I fucking like lose my shit. My boss looks at me like I'm a fucking psycho. It sucks. So when I was in the UK, I had more of those like night terrors and moments where I was quiet and I couldn't process everything. I couldn't normally enjoy anything anymore because it just didn't make sense to me. And then when I finally got to America, I was doubting whether or not I made the right decision. And when I got to America, I realized how much everyone's out of the loop, how much nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't do this interview for attention, for pity points or nothing. I did this because I want people to know what's going on. This stuff still happens in our world, dude. I am just the vessel of this truth. I am just the living example and vessel of this truth. And it's something that needs to be known so it can be prevented. Like I said, it's easy enough. Unless you're there. You've been there. I've been there. Other people have been there that you've interviewed. Outside of that, no one really knows.
No.
And at the same time, though, you kind of want people to know the reality, but you don't want anyone else to live that reality because it's bad enough that millions of people already had to live it. So in terms of how I'm holding up, it's putting on a fake smile every day, dude. It's not really so much depression. It's just remembering it. I'm not so much sad. It's just, I am sad. I'm just a little sad, but I have to rediscover everything in which there is a joy to life, But at the same time, what keeps me down is because this stuff happened. It's not because there isn't joy in life. It's just because there are other things that pollute life that are not enjoyable, which is this war. So when I talk to guys online or people in real life, and I tell them what I did and who I fought with and stuff, they all have their base assumption. And I wish that more people would just kind of see the reality of it, but not have to live it. So, yeah, in terms of how I'm doing, it's tough. I have a goal. I have a couple goals. I just want to make money again and chill out, and hopefully I can live up here on this property forever, and I can eventually make my own little house and have maybe a couple horses, a dog, and something. Just tuck myself away, dude, because I don't know how someone like me made it through, but if I made it through, I don't want anyone else to go through it, So, yeah, that's how I view it. And, yeah, the war was tough, though. That war sucked. There were good parts. Yeah, I had some good parts. I had some enjoyable moments, but for the most part, it sucked. And I won't want to ever go through it again.
Yeah.
But if something like that happened in my country, where that's what scared me about Ukraine, was I realized how much this could happen anywhere.
Yeah.
If anyone just pissed off anyone else enough, and both those people held a higher place in society, whatever, politicians, generals, whatever, presidents, whatever, this can happen anywhere, and I don't want it to happen anywhere else. So as much as I'm proud of what I did was no one else can do, it's not something anyone else should have to do.
No.
So when I kept my uniform and my flags and my patches and all that, I kept it to remind myself that if I survive that, I should still go. I need to enjoy life. I need to have a physical reminder of what I went through. It's not so much a political belief of who I fought with and what I fought for, or even anything. It's just that it's what I did. And that's it. So.
Yeah. And if you made it through that, mate, you can make it through anything, to be honest.
Thanks. I try to tell myself that every day, though, too. I do. I feel like I probably can. So.
Absolutely, mate.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, you've talked about, and I'll share this with the audience, talking about writing a book and everything. And of course, a book is way more than we could ever do in a podcast length. So I think things like that, getting it on paper will really help, I guess, break it down and maintain that legacy and talk about it. And it's sort of what you went through and what those guys sacrificed isn't for nothing when they're remembered and talked about and written about. It maintains that.
Yeah.
It's Yeah, it's the scale of this, which you and I, no one has the words to actually describe the scale of this war. You know, you're talking about thousands a day, men dying. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, you and me have been there. We've both spent extended periods of time there, and you can't describe how, like, the actual scale of this 21. You know, stories like yours are not isolated at all, and nor are they isolated to one side. You know, stories are the exact same on the Russian side of guys who just signed up to fight or got volunteered to fight. It's a crazy thing, and I think it's going to be interesting how we look back on this in 10 years and go, holy shit, what did we do to each other? How the fuck did we do that? Like, you look at, you know, I have or not in-laws, but, you know, close family on my girlfriend's side who are Japanese, and you're like, you're the most lovely people, and you're like, how the fuck did the Australians and the Japanese do this to each other 80 years ago? And then how did the Germans, you know, you were fighting alongside Germans and Americans, and look what we did to each other. And I know in the future one day we'll look, and how the fuck do we do this to each other? It's
exactly, dude. It's war is thousands of lives taken away each day. There's like a million stories behind each and every one, dude. These people had lives. These weren't just people who were non-existent in the war uniform, or some were just non-existent again because they were killed. You know, these people have stories. Even if I couldn't really understand their languages, like each of these people had a life, a story. Yeah. My squad leader, he was Fokker. He was a normal dad. He was actually 28 years old. He had a wife and he had a little girl, and he was a normal dad. My buddy Carl, he was in the Finnish military, but he just lived in a cabin up nowhere and kind of did his own thing. I had my buddy Biker was another member of my squad. He was studying at college. He was actually studying for medical practices at college. My buddy, and there's another guy in my unit who always wanted to go to Japan. He actually loved Japanese culture, and actually he fought for his country so he could actually preserve that, so he could still have a home, so he could still go to Japan and see that whole country, and then just come back to his regular life. You know, these people had stories, and it wasn't just when you put it in that perspective, these guys certainly aren't just disposable. No. But when we're disposing each other left and right, killing each other off, it's like we're getting rid of history. Every person has a history, and that contributes to the bigger picture of the story of humanity. So when we're killing each other, we're destroying each other's legacies and histories and families and friends. I mean, it's not just it's nuts, dude.
People have families and stuff. There was a photo shared. There's a really good Instagram page called Photographing War, and it's pretty savage. And it's a photo of like a body in like just broken down on a road, and it goes, what was once a mother's beautiful baby boy is now unnamed, mutilated pile of mush for someone's nightmares, and your viewing almost 81 years later remains run over by a Russian soldier in Operation Barbarossa in 1941. And I think that first line of, this is someone's baby boy. You know, it's what humans can do to each other. You wouldn't think that a smart creature could do.
When I was, and as I said, living here in America, it's so tough because you can't talk to anyone about this. Not because like, oh, I did this, like I'm a badass, and no one will understand, and everyone's below me. No, it's because no one knows, no one wants to hear it, and that's the sad part, is because when you know reality, when you see what life is for what it is, the good and the bad, you take the right action versus trying to make a fantasy out of it. Yeah. And that's how I see a lot of people making this war as a fantasy. So that's why I'm writing the book. I'm working on the book that I am, because I want to make. I mean, I didn't even mention everything that I did in this interview, this podcast, that I could put in the pages as much as I wanted. Because I mean, I don't want to even write a book for profit. I won't even write it for that. I'd write it because I want this to be prevented in the next century, or the next year, or the next, like you said, 10 years. I don't want this to happen again. Yeah. So if I could put in the pages what people, what could be seen, or what people could see, or even read, or whatever, then it would give people a perspective.
But
And
you hear that with World War One. It was the war to end all wars, and it didn't do it. We've done it again and again and again. Just horrific shit with more efficient weapons to kill each other. And we're developing every single day more efficient weapons to kill one another. And it's easy to glorify in the age of Hollywood and Call of Duty and shitty Instagram posts until you're there and you're like, holy fuck. I spent a fair bit of time in Ukraine before the war. And I've gone to places, before the war that I've gone after the war. And you're like, I had friends that lived here. And, I had recently, well, not recently, but I did an interview probably 3 days before the war started in Zalote, which is in Donbas region. And there was a thing come on that Intel Savagery that they just flattened the entire village. And I'd done interviews with people there, and I'm like, all those people are dead. And that village was a normal village when I was there before the war, eating borscht and salo. Like, holy fuck. Like, yeah, it's crazy. But mate, I can't tell you how much I really appreciate you coming and speaking to me and being so open and honest and talking about, of course, very, very emotional, difficult stuff.
yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, like I don't care if it was early. I had to get up on my end to talk about this. To see that, I mean, you don't even have to keep this put away, dude. I mean, I don't care if you put this out there in your channel. I want this out there. I want people to know because people need to.
Oh no, I can't wait to put it out. Yeah.
And I got my own pictures I can contribute, send over your way, photos, videos, whatever. I'll do that because when you put it in the bigger perspective, as I say, this is for attention, but not attention for myself. Attention for what's going on in our current history.
Yes.
And if my story, like I said, as hard as it was, doesn't matter on what it could do to help prevent something like this again. Because as you said, man, we got friends, and even the guys who speak English in my unit, things they told me about what they do in their country or how they would enjoy things or how they go about their daily lives now destroyed. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to take, I'd say it's going to take an entire I'd say it's going to take a few generations to actually repair that whole country and Russia itself. Of all the sons that Russia has lost, of all the sons that Ukraine has lost, dude, and all the historical things and cities and everything destroyed, both ends.
Yeah,
it sucks. So
well,
I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's great though that a soldier's perspective gets put into the mix rather than just people playing armchair general.
Yeah.
Because
always happy to share.
Yeah. Sounds good, man. But yeah,
it'd be good to.
Thank you for having me,
mate. No, bloody, it's my pleasure. It'd be great to do this again. I guess in a little while, once I guess it's more decompressed and chat about it once things start moving for you. And my door for you is always open, whether in Australia or on bloody WhatsApp, whatever, mate. Always open. Come for a holiday,
man. Thank you,
mate. Okay, Justin, thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Easy. Okay, thank you, brother. Have a nice day.
All right, you as well.
Okay, bye-bye.